Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. I've got the usual crew here today. We've got Josh Torres.
Hi.
We've got Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chow Min Wu.
How's it going?
Like I assume many of our listeners, I personally have been spending most of the week playing Xenoblade, and to kind of show how much I'm taking to it, I was like, oh darn, I guess it's time to record the podcast now. I don't know if James has been experiencing the same thing. Adam and Josh are kind of lucky that they've been able to already play it early, but a few other games did release potentially in the shadow of Xenoblade that, even though we'll talk about Xenoblade 3 a little bit today as a follow-up from today's introductory discussion, we'll probably spend more time today talking about other recent releases and a few upcoming ones as our primary focus, though we will give Xenoblade a little bit of time later in the cast. One of the games that we talked about last week, relatively briefly compared to our 70-minute discussion of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, was of course the game that released pretty much right at the same time, Digimon Survive. And we have a few people on staff that have been looking at this game as a RPG release for the year. And for the podcast, that torch has been carried by Josh. He was able to talk about his initial thoughts last week on the podcast about Digimon Survive, but now that he has kind of been able to put Xenoblade on the shelf and focus entirely, well, not entirely, a large focus on Digimon Survive, I figured that we just start there and hand it off to Josh about his time with that game and how he feels about it as a strategy RPG visual novel hybrid of a well-known popular IP. So, Josh, just take it away. Digimon Survive. We obviously couldn't give it a ton of attention last week, but we've got a chance now. So, let's just start out and see what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, Adam and I have been trying to find life after Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and seeing, what do we do now? That's feel empty. So, I completed one playthrough of Digimon Survive. People who have kept up with the news on this game know that this is a game that it has different endings. It has 3 different endings and a true ending to it. So I did did my initial playthrough on the moral ending, and and I'm trying to do New Game Plus, but it's I don't know if I really like this game. I think it's okay, competent, but there's a lot of pretty major downfalls. It's had. I'm kind of interested to see, although we'll never know the full story of the development of this game, I'm really interested to see just what happened behind the scenes for this game, because definitely for the change from Witchcraft to Hyde as the development studio, and this game has been in development hell for the last 5-6 years almost, it feels like. It's kind of it there is one thing that it really does well, that I like, is its actual visual presentation, and the visual novel segment has this um anime live 2D look, but it's very refined in the way that you interact with these characters, the portraits, and the way that you uh how the camera zooms into their portrait as you speak to them, and then zooms back out. That's a very cool neat effect that they have on the visual novel style storytelling. To set up what the game is, it has a very slow beginning. This is after a brief battle tutorial, showing off some characters that you won't get to know about till way later on. You're kind of put into the shoes of this main character named Takuma. Takuma is not a silent protagonist. He's a very active character. As his own character. He's not a blank slate. Um, you're part of a summer camp, in middle school, and you staying at this school area, and at this remote town, and there's been somewhat weird reports of a landslide, and there's some urban legend that students have gotten missing in the past at this place, because of there's a large forest, and it has a very a whole spiritual angle to it. There's shrines around this remote village, and all that sort of stuff. So Takuma meets up with his friends Minoru and Aoi. They're kind of talking about how they're feeling about the summer camp, and about the place that they're at, and then they decide to go follow some of their classmates who have run off into the woods. They're feeling adventurous. They want to like find something to do. So as they're like following them, they like go into like the deep woods after like crossing like a cavern into there, and they notice that there's some weird stuff going on. Like there's very much like callbacks like the original seasons of Digimon where like snow in spring is happening. Why is it snowing? It's so weird. And so they start like noticing that there's like this weird phenomenon um that they're noticing like some like there's like a presence there, but they don't exactly know what's going on as they're trying to find these their classmates. And they also meet with a like a local like archaeologist of sorts. He calls himself the professor, so like he's like a professor, and but he's like his main specialty is like studying these ancient ruins. So one thing leads to another, and Takuma like faces off against like this mysterious creature, which we don't know at the time. They never call them Digimon; they call them Kemonogami in this game. So as he's trying to protect everyone from like this hostile Digimon, he like falls down like a hole, and then he ends up like in almost like a mirror version of their reality, where like things look the same, but like the state of things are different. So like in this like mirror like dimension almost that he falls into.
My brain
Um,
is going Termina.
yeah, yeah. The like he stumbles upon like the school, and the school is like overgrown, like broken windows everywhere. Moss has like grown everywhere. It's just like very run down. And soon enough, like when he gets transported to this world, um, he also meets Koromon, and then the very first battle there, Koromon evolves into Agumon. So there's your partner Digimon, and then the rest of the game is typical like, hey, go find your friends. They've made their partner Digimon, and try to find out more about this place. So it's very much like kind of dancing to the tune of like what older Digimon like anime fans are used to. It's a like uh, if you've watched those older seasons of Digimon, like very much call back to that. There's like a lot of nostalgia in the game that calls back to those first two seasons, especially like the Digimon selection. Like the Digimon selection was like things I remember from the show as a kid. I was like, oh, that's cool. I remember Angemon. I remember Piedmon. I remember Puppetmon. I remember Palmon, Gomamon, and all that, all those, those Digimon. And it's not like in Cyber Sleuth, and I was like, I recognize these, but then they have like five different permutations, and they also evolve into like, you know, who the fuck them on, and all that stuff, sort of stuff.
Who was the monster that was originally attacking the shrine?
That's Gotsumon. At the very early on, that was the Digimon that was attacking you. It's like the Digimon filled up with like rocks.
I'm looking it
Gotsumon.
up. Oh yeah, I remember Gotsumon.
Yep.
All right.
Uh,
I mean, I guess I had to look it up, so maybe I didn't
yeah.
remember. I remember what he
Yeah,
looks like. I
didn't
didn't
write the
remember the
design.
name.
Yeah, you don't have to remember the
Yeah.
name. So the typical structure of the game is like it's split up into several chapters. And the or 95% of the chapters, the structure is basically start of the chapter. There are events like kind of introducing like what's like the going to be the premise of this chapter. Like what is like the thing that the survivors or the students have to like do. It's like one chapter would be like, oh, we need to go investigate this amusement park because we heard that like this missing classmate of ours might be there, or the premise could be like, oh, we need to go travel into the sewer system because we obtained the key from a prior chapter. It's basically just kind of like the reason why like what you're going to be doing this chapter. So you have your opening events, then you have like a free action mode where it's like there's when you traverse in the game from location to location, there's like a menu system that you bring up with your cell phone. You said it showed in the trailers for it, but like you bring up your smartphone, and then you kind of decide which place you want to go, and then like it'll indicate on you if there's like a person there, or if there's like an event there to progress the main story. Um, and these consume free action points. So like for example, if you have like 12 free action points, you can go into like the music room, and it might have Minoru there, And if you talk to Minoru, it'll indicate like with an icon, this will consume a free action point. So you talk to Minoru, and typically you have like your conversation will lead you to like a multiple choice dialogue where like one of them will enhance the character affinity for that character, or it'll have like a decision that'll uh, bring more points to either to your moral harmony or wrathful alignment, like your karma system of sorts. So that's kind of like the big two like
Gameplay
systems
systems.
behind gameplay systems behind like the split decisions there. So you kind of that's a way for you to interact, get your character affinities up, or get your like karma points up. After that, more events will happen. Like a conflict will arise after like you progress the main story after this initial free action, and then at some point, due to like the conflict in that chapter, it'll be like an exploration mode now, where you have like the same um like system, like free action, except there are no free action points. It's basically just like, hey, go do whatever you want. None of these points are going to be depleted. So it's still the same thing of like going to places, talking to characters. You can find hidden items with your cell phone if you want, um, and you can progress the main story whenever you're ready on that. And then usually after that, it'll lead to events that'll lead up to like the chapter's like final boss of that chapter, and so forth. And then the loop begins again with the next chapter. And like they stick to this structure like to a T for most of the game, which is kind of really annoying because like that doesn't feel very ambitious in that regard. It's like very safe because you already anticipate like this is going to happen now with that kind of structure. Um,
And how many
and
chapters are
so
there?
there's like 12, at least for the ending that I'm at. There's 12. Um, so in between like the free action and the exploration phases, where you kind of you can go wherever you want to talk to these characters. There's also um free battles that you can do to like grind up your Digimon through the strategy RPG aspect of it, and you can also find battles like in the environment, like when you scan an environment and like, oh, there's like a thing on my cell phone, and then like when you view like the scenery with your cell phone, sometimes you see like glitches in the environment, and like usually it's an item, like a consumable item that you can use, or it could be like an enemy's trying to ambush you, and you can choose whether you want to battle them or not. And usually you'll have like different Digimon available to you as opposed to the free battle and so forth. Um, the strategy RPG system of it is pretty bare bones and light for the most part. Digimon usually have like a standard attack and then like one unique attack to them, and then like so they only have like two attack options, and then you can like equip like for like moves to them with like items that you get. So like um let's say you get like a crystal that's like glacial rain, you can equip it to a Digimon, and then they can now use the glacial rain spell and so forth that you want. But other than that, if you don't equip those items, they're stuck with those two moves and those like other additional moves, whether it's like another spell or it's like a buff or a debuff. They don't really add much either. It kind of just feels like, okay, sure. Like if you want to try to make this character a certain role, it's kind of very slim around the edges there. And those items can also be like take the form of like passive stat buffs as well. So each Digimon can equip up to two of those at once, whether it's like another move or another like passive stat increase.
Now, I know we've
To
talked
them.
in the past, both in previewing Digimon Survive as well as touching on it last week, about the balance between story and strategic, like the strategy RPG gameplay. In the context of like the chapter unfolding and like this, that you mentioned how it's very rote and kind of repeats itself. Like, how many story battles can you expect to play through per chapter?
I mean, if you're not doing any of the free battles and like not engaging with like the ambushes of Digimon, like if you're just going with like the main game and the story battles, you're maybe thinking roughly 11 to 12 story
Oh, that's
battles.
that's actually higher than I thought it would. I was expecting you to say like three or four, but I
No,
don't
no,
know
I
when.
mean, there's a chunk, but like there's like the adventure sections are like way more than like the battle sections. Like it's the people will still feel that like 70% adventure visual novel to 30% RPG battle split. You can try to drive up that percentage more with like the free battles, but they're very like free battles are just there to like grind up stats because later on, if you haven't like built up your Digimon, you will run into like stat checks that like you just cannot battles you just like will be very very difficult to nearly impossible to win if you don't meet certain stat checks because um that this game like in Digimon fashion, like the enemies enemy level progresses by digivolutions or evolutions, like so most of the enemies you run into will be like rookie form at first, then like later on they'll be champion and then ultimate or mega, or if you're going by the Japanese iteration, it's like perfect and then ultimate, which is perfect is ultimate form in English, and then ultimate is mega format in
I
that way.
remember that. I remember
Yeah,
that from like Cyber Sleuth or something like that. Like, oh yeah, that's how it works.
yeah, yeah. So like by the end, most of your enemies will be mega, and if your Digimon are still stuck in champion or ultimate form, those are going to be really tough battles because those are just like hard stat checks of like, hey, make sure that like your Digimon are like at least high level ultimate forms or like mega form to like just take these on. So so like the for free battles and those ambushes, like you can actually recruit like Digimon on top of like the main story Digimon that you get. And they have like a negotiation system, somewhat like SMT. It reminds me a little bit of Persona 2 of how they handled it, where you talk to the Digimon, and then there's like 6 pips at like above them, and then you're asked 3 questions with four responses each. And depending on the responses, those pips will fill up. Like a choice may fill up 1 pip, another choice will fill up 2 pips, and then other choices may take away pips from them. And you need at least 3 pips filled up for them to give you the option of like, hey, either do you want to recruit me, or do you want me to give you an item? And then when you ask them to join you, it's like a RNG percentage chance of like, hey, be my friend, but then it'll say like above success rate like 46% or 25%. So
And
even
the more
after that,
pips, the more successful or more likely to be
no,
successful.
no,
No, huh?
nope,
Huh.
no. So it's weird. Like even if you do perfect responses and fill up those 6 pips, it'll the success rate will remain the same on that end. I think the only way you drive up those percentages is like by the karma alignment of the Digimon. Say like if you're like on the moral path, the moral it represents vaccine Digimon. So vaccine type Digimon will have higher percentage rates
The
to join
Gryffindor
you.
Digimon.
Yeah. Um, but it's very abusable, right? Because if you want a Digimon, and when you fail that RNG success rate check, they'll just flee. But all you have to do is like, okay, well, I really wanted this Digimon, so all you have to do is like press start during mid battle and say retry battle, and it'll like respawn that Digimon from the start, and then you can just like talk to them again as soon as like you get your turn and like try again, and then if oh no they ran away again, we go retry, and then just keep on answering them the same way so they're satisfied, and then do the RNG check, and then they either join you or you don't. And if they don't, then just go retry the battle and do it again. So it's a very tedious way to just like I just feel like hey, like what you were saying, if you get more pips, that should raise your success rate for that instead of always remaining static in
Yeah,
that
because at
regard.
least that way, if you had to restart it's almost like demon negotiation. If you have to restart the negotiation, you can kind of say like, all right, that wasn't the right answer. What is the right answer? Oh, this is the right answer. There, I'll have a better chance of getting it now. So you can feel like there's some sort of progression towards getting the Digimon you want.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
yeah, it's like it's not great in that regard. And then of course as you go through the game, like you'll start realizing it's like, oh, like negotiating with rookie Digimon like feels almost pointless like early on as well, because yeah, yes, you can just use consume mats that you like find later on in the game to like evolve them, but you can also just like recruit their like evolutions later on, so you don't have to like spend those mats wasteless like needlessly on them, because you can just like recruit their higher forms later on as well.
Are they any
So
weaker if you recruit like a champion form without training it up from a rookie?
no, because they'll just start at like their base level, and you can just grind their levels. There's no
Huh.
there's no there's no benefit of like recruiting like weaker Digimon and training them up. There's like no like affinity bonuses or anything like that to add on to their stats. It's just like whatever the levels dictate. So
In some ways, I kind of like that because that way you don't feel like penalized for like, oh, I never upgraded my Birdramon from a Biomon. Therefore, if I capture a Birdramon, it's going to be weak. But so I do like that it allows you just to capture a new. Can you eventually capture like ultimates or higher than champions?
yeah, you can negotiate with ultimates and megas, and it's treated the same way. There's no it's not like easier or tougher. It's just you can just do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Other than that, the strategy RPGs, the way you control them is kind of clunky because there's like 3 zoom levels, and even the farther zoom level still feels too close. The camera snaps at corners, so like there's no like free camera like rotation. It's always snaps to a corner on it. So like some camera angles still look like shit no matter which corner you snap to. Um, and like when you deploy Digimon, especially when you're retrying for a stage to like negotiate, there's like no like um easy way to kind of just deploy everything at once. So there's like no button to say, hey, like deploy like my lowest level Digimon or deploy my highest level Digimon. It's always like you can usually deploy up to 6 Digimon in battle. And it's always, hey, go click this Digimon, go click the space, go click this other Digimon. So it's like always one by one. It's like it feels like it's too many button presses to like for like it's something that
And
should be
how many
easily
do you
solvable.
deploy per battle?
Like up to 6 usually. Some the
Okay.
number may vary for some main story stuff, but it's usually up to 6. Other than that, it's like it's this battles are very very standard. It's like if you attack them from the side or the rear, there's additional damage. Vaccine that type Digimon are strong against Wrathful, which are strong against Harmony or something like that. There's your typical rock
Virus
paper scissors.
and Data, if I remember right. At least those were the
Yeah,
English
virus.
names at one point.
Yeah, because like the karma is like associated with the types, and it's like it's just only like found out like a quick tooltip in the game. Like moral is vaccine, harmony is data, and wrathful is virus. And it's like a quick tooltip. It's like okay, great. And it's like that also has typos, and that's and getting
I
into
like
it.
how you
This
just say it,
game,
by the way, it also has typos.
yeah, this game's localization, the English script is like sort of a mess. Like there's the typos are like whatever, right? Like they happen, they happen maybe a bit too frequently in this game, but there's also just like there's like stiff dialogue abound like when characters are talking to each other, and also like pronouns. Like the big problem in this game is like the the pronouns for Digimon are like just a random dice roll on whether they're gonna say he or she to refer to a Digimon. It's sometimes not even consistent. Like in the same like exchange of like they'll refer to a Digimon as a she and a he in like the same like
Oh,
conversation. Yeah,
when you were
and it,
saying that it was just like a dice roll, I'm just like, well, that kind of makes sense because like, you find a wild Biomon, is it a boy or a girl? But in the same conversation, I'm like, is that what he means? Oh, that's what he means.
No,
oh
I
no.
remember specifically you were looking at Labramon, or you're talking with Labramon,
Mhm.
and like literally like 2 sentences apart, they called it she's your Digimon, or he's doing very well. And like, wait, is it male or female?
Yeah,
So,
like yeah, it makes it confusing, and then like like it's the point that it makes it confusing like in the middle of conversation, and that's not great. It also happens to characters every so often as well, like in the middle of like conversation with the professor, which is very much he's a dude, like they'll just switch between she and he, like in the middle of conversation with the professor. It's like okay, so that's kind of a shame, like I feel like that's more of a process like problem more so than like it's probably not the
yeah,
localizer's fault.
yeah, it's very very likely that they just didn't have context when they're doing these lines. They didn't know
Yeah,
who they were talking to,
yeah,
and it's not just one localizer like mistranslating
yeah.
a pronoun. It's just they don't have the context always.
Yeah.
Well, for
Oftentimes
game,
these lines they're translating are like deep into like Excel sheets, and they all they know is very little.
Yeah.
So
And also like a thing that like really did not like that really turned me off like as I played more of this game is like the most of the characters just to be blunt just like freaking suck. Like I
Yeah,
do
I was
not
actually going to
like
ask. I think you're transitioning to this now, but you've talked
Mhm.
at length about how the gameplay is kind of you're describing it in a way that seems to seem like serviceable, fine, kind of expected, nothing unique. And I was going to ask, like, how do the you mentioned the different moralities in the dialogue system, and obviously this game is primarily visual novel, so it stinks to hear that they have so many issues with the localization and with the just how the dialogue flows. How do you feel just about the story and characters that you're interacting with?
like the main story is okay. I actually kind of like what they do with the ending, and then I heard a lot about how the other endings handle it, and it's like there are certain bits about the like the very end that I do like, but it's because more of like an overall Digimon lore perspective. Like I guess I won't spoil that. I'll let people figure that out. But the characters themselves are just like a lot of them are unlikable or very consistent or inconsistent or just very dull. Like this game, I guess the best thing I can say about this game when it comes to characters, like it does, I guess, mental breakdowns kind of okay, well, but the characters are sort of insufferable. Like Rio example is like for um an early example of like, oh my god, I can't stand this character already. He's very much like kind of in that mindset of like, okay, everything sucks, everything sucks, everything sucks. No one's gonna come us. We're doomed. We're gonna like, we're never gonna like. Very pessimistic, very cynical about the whole thing. And it's just like, and people try to reach out to him. He's just like, just not there.
He just shuts
In the
down.
head. Yeah, pretty much. And just like to the point that like a later a later like villain like disguises himself as like as a woman and like it's like oh man they look like my mom and just keeps on calling them mommy and whatever online he's
What?
there yeah and then another one God bless Lopmon but Lopmon's partner Shuji really freaking sucks. He's like kind of like the oldest of the group so he considers himself the leader but he's also like a coward and also like abuses Lopmon because he has such a strong distrust of like the monster partners and he's like how will I you expect me to trust you like Lopma has only done like good trying to like help Shuji save Shuji's life get him through like these encounters and like he just treats Lopmon like a piece of shit always and it's just like oh this sucks and then there's just other characters that seem like they're kind of boring, right? Like Minoru's like your typical like your wingman that like wants to be a hero and like this is what a hero would do. Aoi is like your other like main like side character where she's kind of like the kind of the shy girl of the group, but like there are moments in which like she kind of takes charge a little bit versus like she gets fed up and tells people to shut up like when they're having heated arguments and like at a later turning point like she kind of adopts a more like leaderly role but she in the way there like she's kind of very boring and kind of like played very stereotypically in that kind of archetype. And also like these characters have like, kind of quote unquote moments of character development where once you get them to a certain character affinity, their Digimon will like evolve to like ultimate and mega. And like these kind of remind me of like these optional heart to heart events from Xenoblade where like when they reach those certain character affinities, like their number is like a certain number for them like on the during the exploration or free action phase there's like a new location called like the deep forest or the deep woods and then you go into this area and then you see like a brief like conversation or situation where they like get ambushed by a hostile Digimon and then like during the scene before battle you just see them oh I'm gonna like do this and this and this and then the Digimon's like oh you're powering me up with your feelings so like um they go evolve and then right after that after you get like the evolve and they do like their battle one-on-one battle against the other hostile Digimon it's like all right you're awesome now you're doing well like you're this kind of newly reformed person and then when you go back to the main story since it's like an option thing they're still a piece of shit they didn't really like learn anything like organically because that was just an optional thing that you could have reached you know so
It is kind of interesting how that sort of mirrors the discussion that you had about the Xenoblade 3's lack of heart to hearts, where in the other games in that series, we talked about how these nice moments of character interaction were kind of sequestered off into these optional dialogues that couldn't be reflected in the main story. And so it's like Digimon Survive has these things where the main story really suffers for it, especially when these characters seem like they're. When you said initially that you just didn't like these characters, yeah, you're saying that some of them are just kind of boring or archetypal or bland, but some of them seem like they're genuinely written to be like, you're not supposed to like this character because he's an asshole. And then he might have his comeuppance in like a side story, but that can't be reflected in the narrative.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
and
huh.
yeah, I definitely some of them are like they're written like purposely to be like that, but it's done in such a way that it's just like there's a way to like do that and then like kind of redeem this character later on, like if you learn more about them. But at how the way Digimon Survive does it, it's like these people are just like too far like God like out the other end. That's like it's hard to like bring them back and make them likable again. In my eyes, it's just like one of those. It's like it's not doing like there are three characters I liked by the end of this game. One of them is only the main cast. Like Saki is the only one I actually like out of the main characters because she actually grows into like an interest. Like she starts off as a very selfish kind of character, and the way that they write her, the way that the things that you learn about her, like makes sense of why she's like this, and the way that like she develops throughout the game feels. It's almost like she had like a different writer compared to like the rest of the cast. Um, compared to the other characters. Like she actually becomes a really really likable character, and I enjoy Saki a lot. The other characters I like by the end are the professor and Miyuki. But like they are characters that are like that you learn more about them like way later into the game, and I like how what why they're there essentially.
Is the
Um,
point of view character much of a character?
Takuma,
Yeah.
like the main character, he's okay. Like he's your standard Digimon protagonist of like we'll get through this all together. Very like he's your typical shonen protagonist almost, right? Like he's not really that interesting, but he gets the job done.
Inoffensive.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So he's not weak or anything. He's just kind of like he's a go getter, and like he's just kind of doing what it needs to be done to kind of get through the game. He's not. There's nothing about him that makes me go like. There's nothing about him that offends me or anything. He's like okay, yeah, cool.
He's there. He
He's there.
occupies space.
Yeah, he's like he's like the typical like Shulk character almost of like he's like yeah like he's kind of likable because like you're playing him and thankfully he's not an ass so he's all right. But if I were to like give this game like an overall score, like it would be somewhere around like of the 5 or 6 range if I were to like review it out of 10. It's like there's too many cracks overall to really find anything like sort of super great about it. It's like it's okay. Like the foundation's like is sort of interesting. Like despite like me being kind of down on like a lot of aspects about this game, I still think it's like the most interesting Digimon game I played this decade because the Cyber Sleuth games are like your typical JRPGs, and this one's like going for something very different than those. Like I just appreciate that. Like okay, you've made this like the Digimon premise into like a sort of like I don't know, like people say it's more mature, but it's like it is kind of like more edgy almost, and like Digimon recontextualized into like almost like a death game is a interesting angle, and there are definitely like times when characters do meet unfortunate fates from like your decisions and so forth. It's just I would like them to take a crack at this with like a somewhat better development pipeline and like just kind of there is a way better version of this game that is yet to be realized. I think like the format and the structure is there. I just think like they just need to like really think about fleshing out a lot of these systems, like making the narrative structure a bit more freeform and unexpected instead of sticking to this strict linear like narrative structure and like fleshing out like Pokemon ability, not Pokemon, Digimon abilities in battle, making it so they have like more like unique moves to the Digimon themselves instead of like, oh, here are your 2 standard moves and you can like equip them with other like things if you want.
Yeah, it sounds
Because
like this game just really suffered due to it. I mean, a lot of games end up going through development struggles, but just coming out the other end, this is a game where it seems like, based on your experience with it, you can kind of see where it suffered for having that experience during development. Because I remember, like, in earlier episodes of this podcast, we would have like the yearly check-in, like, by the way, Digimon Survive was delayed a year. By the way, like, here's a note from the producer saying they're sorry. And it's like, now it's finally out. And I don't want to say it's come out with a whimper, because actually the game is done pretty well on Steam. I think Adam was comparing, or he had found someone comparing the sales of Digimon Survive on Steam compared to like all of the Square Enix output this year, and it's
the reviews specifically. You know, people use review count to kind of estimate sales, right?
Yeah, it's
And
like,
it's
what is
quite a lot considering it's been out like a week. So
yeah, the rule of thumb is like there's a sale, 10 sales for every written review on Steam. Obviously, that's with huge error bars. That's just a heuristic.
I've actually heard like 50 sales for every review.
I thought it was 50 to 1. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I just probably misremembered the number.
And also like think about like there's also the factor of like there was no like pre-release code for Digimon Survive, so people are eager to like get the word out there to other people, say like, how is this game? And there's like more incentive to do that because there's no like big outlets that like, you know, were able to like give their feedback on the game beforehand. So like, you know, it's very valuable at this critical point in the game's lifespan of like word of mouth, essentially, like
Mhm.
get like, you know, making sure to like to communicate to the developers and the publishers that hey, there is interest in this type of game in the future. And I think people are, for better or worse, you know, people have different opinions on this game, of course, of like because I think people genuinely want this game to do well despite its problems, and I agree with that sentiment. You know, I think there is something more there, and I hope this is like a one and done thing. Despite, you know, my issues with it, there is games can get better. I believe me, games there's the capability for a game to get better with future installments.
No, but thanks for sharing about your experience more at length with Digimon Survive. I know we touched on it initially last week. We will have some other staff contributors covering the site in a review fashion, likely in the coming month. I'm not sure the complete details on that, but we'll keep you up to date if we put anything up on the site. And then, of course, we'll revisit discussing Digimon Survive and how we feel it sits amongst all the other games that released this year with our end of the year discussions.
I do want to mention, because this is on our podcast doc, and I guess I will mention it really fast. And I feel really bad for saying this after the words we exchanged with Digimon. Like, this is gonna sound like a weird transition, but like I picked up another strategy RPG this week as well. It is that Fullmetal Alchemist mobile game that really launched in Japan, and that's also a strategy RPG. It's only in Japanese. There's no planned global release yet or anything. It's published by Square Enix. I don't know who's exactly developing it, but it that is like a game that has like more interesting strategy RPG systems than Digimon Survive. And like I feel bad saying that, but like it's true. Like when I'm like playing that game, I'm making more interesting decisions in the middle of combat than I ever did with Digimon Survive. With Digimon Survive, I usually just like turned on auto battle for free battles and like let it play the game on its own. While like auto battle and something like Full Metal Alchemist is like it would be to your demise almost because of the way the game structures its battle system. To kind of like go back a little bit.
First of all, just to cover it, what's the name of this Fullmetal Alchemist mobile game? Other than just, I saw you playing it, but I was just like, oh, it's that new Fullmetal Alchemist mobile game.
Fullmetal Alchemist Mobile. That's the name of the game.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Very straightforward.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, you know, Fullmetal Alchemist was a very popular manga back in the day. It had 2 anime adaptations. One was like had like an original sort of flair to it that people didn't really enjoy, and then there was another remake called Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood that stuck with the manga storyline, and that's very, very, very highly regarded in the anime community. This is an interesting one because it adapts like the manga story, but it's like there's like a lot of like production value behind it. Like there's like a lot of new anime scenes that they reanimated for this game, but they're not just like taking like you know, anime scenes from like the old anime that are from Brotherhood. Like they reanimated a lot of like things.
Yeah, well, we were watching you play it in chat, and a lot of us who had seen the anime, you know, a decade plus at this point, were like, "Is this new animation?" I think so. No, is this borrowed? No, this is new. Like, it's actually kind of impressive how much like new animation they packed into this thing.
Yeah. So like the main story, it kind of follows like the first like initial episodes of the anime where it kind of skips kind of into the future a little bit, just a tiny bit with Rose and Cornelio, like that first episode, and then after that, it'll go into like the proper like storyline of the manga, where like your second chapter is like the early mining town arc, and then like the first side story you unlock is like the battle on the train that introduces Roy, and then back to the main story you go to the Shro Tucker and Nina whole story arc from there. And it's like it's not like every aspect of this game makes you wish it was a console game, because like it's so primed to do that. And like the way that the stages are presented in the main story is like that newspaper Valkyria Chronicles 1 style thing, where like they have pictures of like the incoming stage like on a newspaper page, and that's always fun. And then so you have like these fully 3D events, like kind of setting up the premise of the whole thing, and then you usually face off against other characters in battle. Like you kind of have to like, because there's like a mobile game, you have to kind of take it's not quote unquote following the canon in the sense of like what characters you're deploying, because of course this has a gotcha element, and you gotcha for characters. They come in R and SR and SSR rarities. So like like for when I was like in the mining town arc, I already drew like a SSR Armstrong and SSR Lust, and of course in the storyline, those two never team up,
Right.
and with Ed and Al for that part. So yeah, but the strategy RPG aspect of it is more interesting than Digimon, because like characters actually have like kits and roles where like they have their standard attack, of course. Some of them have standard attacks that are from ranged or from melee, and they have like two other like abilities, and then like a super attack. But the way that like they kind of mesh into each other is interesting, because like characters like Alphonse and Armstrong are like tank characters, so they actually have like a stance skill where if you deploy it at all adjacent units by like 2 spaces, if a character attacks like any unit by them by 2 spaces, they'll actually get in front of them and like take a tank stance. And if they're attacking by melee, they can do a counterattack. But if it's ranged, they won't. So you have to start getting putting into consideration. Okay, like these characters are actually pretty squishy, and some of these enemies deal a lot of damage. And of course, you have like that rock paper scissors system of like red type units will be strong against green type units, which are strong against blue type units, which are strong against red type units, etc. And then the light and dark type units, they're weak against each other. Um, so that's another consideration you have to make. But it's just more interesting in the way that the enemy designs and the stages are laid out, because the enemy threat is like sort of high. If you like try to bum rush it, like your character's just gonna get off easily. So I just thought that was a really interesting comparison, because I hopped into Fullmetal Alchemist Mobile right after Digimon Survive. Like in Digimon Survive, I'm like doing a new game plus playthrough, but that has been like very dull, because at New Game Plus you're just skipping all the text into battles, but but all your Digimon levels and all your inventory and your whole Digimon roster are just straight copied from your previous playthrough, and like the enemies don't scale up to your level. And in New Game Plus, so you're just like 50, 60 levels above you know these starting stages. So it's like, oh, okay, it's just gonna play itself, and you're just kind of going through the motions. That's not really an engaging uh New Game Plus playthrough there. Meanwhile, Fullmetal Alchemist Mobile, it just feels rewarding to think about stages tactically, because there's like sub objectives you can do. Like say there's like for a stage there might be civilians, and like one of the sub objectives might be like, okay, keep 3 of these civilians alive, but the civilian AI is like super bad, so you kind of have to like kind of caress them and corral them into like a way that like that'll make them survive and work with you. And it's just it's kind of a weird shame. It kind of makes me want to like rewatch the Brotherhood anime as I play through it. It's been a lot of fun, but it's your typical early days for like gacha game. I don't know how long I'm gonna stick with it, because as much fun as the gameplay is in Fullmetal Alchemist, the whole structure around it is very mobile gacha game. There's your battle pass, where there's like a free tier and then an additional paid tier if you want to do that. There's your typical, when you're upping like the stars on
Yeah,
your
and
characters too.
there was the usual carrots where it was like, do these quests and you'll get, I forget the exact details, but do the battle pass and you'll get the SSR version of, I think, Winry. If you do these quests, you'll get Mustang. If you spend money, you'll get eventually you'll get Envy for free. Well, for free, I guess. So there's different ways that they incentivize you to interact with the game in the
Yeah,
expected ways in order to reward you.
there's like a really dumb one where like normally in battle you can activate a function sort of like Fire Emblem Three Houses where you can like go back several turns to like redo a move. So like normally if you're not paying money, you can do this once in battle and like you can go back to like a certain amount of moves, like 5 or 6 moves like before, maybe a little bit more. But if you paid like $1 or something, you can like have access to more of that. You can do it more than once in battle.
That's kind of
Yeah.
scummy.
So
Uh-huh.
it's like those resurrection potions that you use. But can you choose your way for like a hard level fight, or is this kind of like what is it?
I mean, there is like different strategies, right? Like there'll be hard fights and and you can play around it. So right now, like I have Armstrong and Alphonse as like a double tank team, and have Winry as like a healer, and then usually I have either like Kimberly, Envy, and or Lust as like my DPS characters. Sometimes I'll have Ed out there as well, depending on like the enemy type that I'm going up against. So, but it's completely there's ways you can get by through tougher fights, like if you play around with like the character's skills and what sort of like setup you have. You have like a double take setup that I have that like it's fairly safe because they're taking hits. They can take a lot of hits, and Rinri has like really really powerful heals, especially when you like level her up and level up her skills and so forth. But it's mileage may vary. There's just like early game progression stuff. I don't know what end game looks like. I don't know if I'm gonna get to end game. It's just one of those like weird moments of like, well, I kind of like not after Xenoblade 3. I'm not really working on Digimon Survive like for site activities. So like I kind of have like a spare moment to breathe and like check out other games that like I typically wouldn't if I were busy. And that stuff. But I think if this got a global release, like I would probably play it a lot more. Because I do think like the game itself is interesting, despite it having like the really scummy gotcha things, around the edges, which is it never feels good, to be honest. But that's how these games are designed and structured, and that's what makes money. It's like
It's
that.
been fun to watch, but I would never play it myself.
Yeah, mobile game developers, like this it's down to a science, right? This is they've done many many studies throughout the years of like here's what works and what doesn't. So this is the structure of games now.
And yet they still shut down somehow.
I mean, it has to be interesting too. Like for in Fullmetal Alchemist case, they have a big IP behind it, so I think it'll probably last. But if it's like something like a totally unknown IP, it's gonna be a lot harder. And it's not even just mobile gacha games, right? Like this structure exists in a lot of free to play games. Like Multiverses, for example, has like that free and paid battle pass type of deal, and you have like a whole perk system as you progress character levels through that. You can't pay for that, but you do have to grind it, and you have dailies to complete as well to get battle pass stuff and et cetera, et cetera. It's not just Multiverses, but you know, many other games, not just mobile games, have that structure in place.
Yeah, like MMOs and
Mhm.
God, what is the
Yeah.
type of game that like Overwatch is called? Hero shooter.
Box shooter.
Shooters. I don't know, hero shooters. Yeah, hero
So,
shooters, I guess. But League of Legends, like MOBA style, MOBA.
yeah, MOBAs, MMOs even have like dailies.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, that's just what I've been up to. Yep.
I was gonna say, I mean, Grand Blue has his big summer stream just yesterday, but no news on Relink. It's more about the
Well.
mobile game. Sorry, guys.
You did like child. Like, you were kind of getting into like when I was streaming the Fullmetal Alchemist game, and like, oh, we should mention also that game has a really funny gotcha animation that makes us like really question like our generation, because the gotcha animation is Ed goes up to a phone booth at a train station, and it has like a full on like circular dial phone in a booth that you have to put in numbers, like in a circle motion, and then you'll get like a ring from it, and then you pick up the phone, and then a train comes in with your gotcha characters that you pulled.
It's a boomer mobile game. Only boomers can play this gotcha
So
game.
we just like thought about it. It's like, well, how many like
Do modern teenagers know what a rotary phone is?
yeah.
I think the best part is you can choose a phone number. So I told Josh to call 911, and he got nothing.
Yep. Feels bad.
I wonder if that like seeds the RNG in any way.
I have no
It
idea if
doesn't matter.
I have no idea if the numbers make a difference, because I think you can still pick up the phone without putting in any numbers. I think it's just there for like flavor, but who knows? Maybe someone will data mine something. It's like, oh, you should have been using these numbers for higher rates. That'd be really fucked up. I think that's like illegal if you do that.
I mean, there are some scummy tactics with all kinds of gotcha games. Wasn't there one in the Dragon Ball Dokkan battle where you can never get certain characters on your account, and then people found that from data mining and they said it was a bug?
Oh yeah, there's definitely like weird like in the past mobile game shit where like as you create an account, like the certain accounts will be like seeded to like never ever get a character, and like you just won't know that because that info will never surface. So there's definitely been scandals like that.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't play mobile games.
Yeah,
Good.
well,
Yeah, don't do it. Don't be stupid like us.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we just watch mobile games get played in chat and then have a laugh about it.
I mean, this could be our mobile game talk. I mean, even Dragalia Lost had its ending, so you could sit back and watch the ending on YouTube. You don't have to install all that 9 gigs to watch it.
Yeah.
Is that how you spent your week? You watched the Dragalia Lost ending?
Well, better than spending 5 hours and playing to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's getting like a proper send off, which is I think most
You
mobile
don't
games
get
don't even
that,
get.
you know?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of games, it's just like you're just suddenly over. It's like reading a manga that just randomly ends, and you're like, we'll see you next time. Never.
Yeah. We'll revisit this. We'll revisit this
like a
little
year
bit.
or two ago when we watched the Kingdom Hearts mobile game summary.
I forgot we did that. We did it for like
Isn't
10 million
the second,
hours.
Isn't the second half of Dark Road
No,
supposed to be
it's
coming
not
out soon?
done yet.
Yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be done by now, but it's not.
They keep
I don't
delaying it and pushing it back, and it's like, okay. At this point, they're probably going to delay it to like Kingdom Hearts 4's launch. Like, aha, there we go.
Well, I have to watch this to understand Kingdom Hearts 4.
Hey man, you kind of do for some aspects of the Kingdom Hearts 4 thing, right? So
Hey, they have that Strelitsa girl who is
Uh-huh.
from the mobile game, so
yep.
so yeah.
Like I said, we don't have to play everything. I mean, Josh even watched the entire YouTube of the Kingdom Hearts mobile game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I played with Adam and Brian and whatever we did.
We didn't
that
watch the
day.
whole thing. We watched like half of it.
I don't know.
I mean,
It was a long thing.
I wonder if George ever ended up playing Dark Road. I miss that man.
We'll never know.
Mm,
It's like the mystery of Atlantis.
yeah,
All
we'll
right,
talk
so-
about another mobile game in a little bit. Let's give other games the spotlight.
All right. So if you were eyes glazed out during the discussion of Fullmetal Alchemist Mobile, there's another upcoming game that is kind of like the next one on our major site radar for a major August release, and that is of course Soul Hackers 2. We didn't do anything on the site for an official preview coverage for that game. However, Adam has had a chance to start playing it. And so we figured we'd take the time on this podcast here to allow Adam to kind of give his initial thoughts on Soul Hackers 2. He's been able to play the starting part of it and just say, like, what sort of game is this? Is it similar to other Atlas games or not? If you play Persona or Shin Megami Tensei 5, is it more of the same? Is it very different? So Adam, just Soul Hackers 2, what is it? How do you feel about it? You, as a veteran of many Atlas games, are well qualified to speak to it. So just kind of take it away.
Okay, so I guess how I'll start this is that if you've played the original Soul Hackers, or I should say the 3DS version, which is a remake of the original on Sega Saturn, you know that Soul Hackers is a dungeon crawler, like literally a first-person, step-by-step maze, labyrinthian dungeon crawler.
Blobber.
Sorry?
A blobber.
Oh yeah, blobber. I think sometimes people have specific
Criteria
niches
for
where
what's a
they
blobber.
well, if it has to be a blobber, it has to be like a Western style or wizardry style because it's not wizardry style or whatever. But anyways, I So the original Soul Hackers did have like a character cast. So unlike a lot of dungeon crawlers where you are almost primarily like creating your own party, obviously you have your party of demons, but the original Soul Hackers had a few main characters. A couple of them played roles in your party. You had a main character, like the player controlled character who didn't speak, kind of a silent protagonist. Nemea is kind of like the biggest speaking character in the game, obviously. I start with that because Soul Hackers 2, they've had a lot of trailers, a lot of footage of the game and whatnot they've shown pre-release, but it still very much is a dungeon crawler. There is a lot of dungeon crawling and a lot of battling, and that is what you're going to be doing most of the time. It's not first person, obviously. You have a third person dungeon crawler, but pretty early on, you get introduced to the main characters of the game, which if you've been watching any of the trailers, you know who they are already. The battle characters are Ringo, Arrow, Milady, and Saizo, and then there's also Fig, who's sort of like your support, kind of in the background, Oracle type character or whatnot. And you get introduced to the cast pretty quickly, like within the first hour, maybe 90 minutes. So unlike, say, a Persona game or something where you get slowly introduced to the cast over time, you get the whole cast pretty much at the onset, and then you're pretty much just thrown into a dungeon. Like, hey, we're gonna go through this dungeon, and you're gonna fight some enemies and get a little bit of backstory on the characters and whatnot. And there's a lot of dungeon crawling. We're running around little mazes, fighting enemies with demons. So the initial flow to the game did feel just a little bit awkward to me. Now that I've kind of gotten used to it, I think I'm gelling with it a little bit more. But it very much is got that sort of dungeon crawler DNA still in there, which, that's how the SMT series started in the first place. Now, probably the most interesting things to point out. First of all, I'm under like a preview embargo, so I can't speak much about beyond like the very early opening parts of the game anyway. But the battle system is not press turn like SMT games, and it's not once more like Persona games. It's instead more of a simplified system where you have each character gets one turn per round. There's no losing turns or gaining turns for hitting weaknesses. That's a key component of almost any SMT or Mega 10 battle system. Is you hit a weakness and you gain extra turns, or if you hit like a resistance or whatnot, if you miss, you lose turns. That's not in here at all. So it's more simplified in that sense. The kind of the unique gimmick that Soul Hackers has is if you hit weaknesses, you start building something called a stack. And they've explained this in the pre-release footage also. But basically at the end of every round, like once every character has had their turn in a round, you perform like a special, kind of like an all-out attack. It's called a Sabbath, or Sabbath, however you pronounce it. And you do kind of like a hit-all attack on all the enemies, and then you do it again. And that's basically every round, every battle. It feels most similar to the demon co-op system in Strange Journey, if you played that, where you'd have like extra demons kind of joining in on attacks if you hit weaknesses. But otherwise, it's more simplified. And I don't know if I like it. I kind of miss the more strategic elements of like gaining turns and whatnot. However, one thing that this game does that a lot of games don't, like Persona games, is that you can change the demon equipped to each character at any time in battle. So unlike, any Persona game where you have your main character who can switch demons and then everyone else is set, in this game, or I should say modern Persona games, in this game anyone can equip any demon. So that actually makes it feel a little bit more like Persona 2. That's somehow the second time Persona 2's got mentioned in this podcast. And there's some strategic elements there. Like I've one of the early boss fights in the game, I was cycling around some of the demons I had to get certain buffs up or to get certain abilities, because certain demons will come with certain abilities. And I think that's got some potential going forward in terms of this sort of flexibility in your demons, in your party cast. Obviously, since you can't like switch out characters, this is sort of like the alternative, is that you're switching out the demons that they have equipped.
Now, can multiple characters equip the same demon or no?
No, I don't think you can. You can't have more than one demon of the same type in your kind of demon pool. So no, but so I'm not very far into the game. I'm a little bit past beyond where I'm allowed to talk about in the preview embargo sense. One thing that's kind of interesting to point out, Josh and I were thinking about this, I think just yesterday, is that I think this is one of the few Mega 10 games where you don't have a silent protagonist. Because almost every other Mega 10 game, like a Persona game, SMT, the original Soul Hackers, Devil Survivor, Digital Devil Saga, any Raidu Kozunoha game, they're all silent. The main protagonist, where the Ringo is not. So that's kind of like an interesting.
Some people are pedantic and they say like the difference between a silent and a voiceless protagonist. Like the Persona protagonist speaks because you say
make
choices.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. Like they don't have a VA,
right?
Or if they do have a VA, it's just for battle cries and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one you just have like an active participant this time, which is very, very rare in Mega 10.
How do you feel about the cast?
So far, it does feel a little bit shallow, but I'm also not very far yet, so it's kind of unfair for me to say that. Like they all feel like they have an archetype, but archetypes are things that exist, and we'll all have to see if the characters kind of break out or become more interesting later on as things develop. The game does have sort of like a social link type system, but it is also somewhat simplified. So basically, each character has a soul level, and that's basically a social link. It's just a different name. And I should say specifically, Arrow, Melody, and Saizo have soul levels with Ringo. And as you proceed through the game, like in a story scene, you might get a choice. Let me pull up my notes here. Where you'll make a choice, and depending on the choice you get, you will raise your soul level with one of the characters. Like, for example, here's just one of the choices where you meet Mimi, who is Fig's like owl, little drone thing that kind of explores the dungeons with you. And one of the things you say is, does it have any weapons? And that makes Melody happy for some reason. But the thing is that the game will actually tell you whose affinity it'll increase. So you're not blind to it. It'll literally say, if you pick this option, Melody's soul level will increase. Or if you pick this option, Arrow's will increase. So I've been going through the game pretty much increasing people's soul levels kind of evenly, not letting one get too far above the rest. And then also throughout the game, you can do these hangout events, which basically they kind of feel a little bit cookie cutter so far, where you go to the bar in the game and you say like, let's have a drink with Arrow, and this is like a scripted event, and they'll have like a little bit of a heart to heart sort of, or maybe they'll just talk about like a previous quest you did or a previous story event that you just went through, and then that person's soul rank will improve. These hangout events come at set times throughout the game. So they're not randomized. There's no RNG. You don't make any choices, or if you do make a choice, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just kind of for flavor. You just like, oh, you now did this quest. Now you can do this hangout event where you'll raise Arrow's soul level a little bit. So unlike a social link, you're not like choosing who you hang out with, like to spend time. There's no like time system or anything like that. There are no choices to be made like in the hangout event. It
kind of reminds me of the bonding events in Scarlet Nexus.
Kinda, yeah. Where you just do these events and they'll raise their soul level, but there's very minimal choice. It's just those choices throughout the story that kind of you can decide who you raise. I don't know if like by the end of the game, if it's like for example, let's just say I got Melody up to soul level 100, which I assume is the max. But I need more for Arrow because I didn't choose enough for him throughout the game. Like, how do I get that up even more? Like, is there like free soul level points hanging out somewhere? I don't know. I'm not that far yet. But it seems like it's taken some mechanics in previous games and simplified them, both in combat and these social links. And I will say, the last thing I'll say so far is that so far the dungeons are kind of boring to me, especially which is not like great if it's going to be kind of a dungeon crawler.
A dungeon crawler has boring dungeons. It's not.
Yeah, they're mostly like linear paths with branching paths that branch off to like dead ends. So it's pretty much almost like a battle corridor where you just like go through the path, fight enemies, and you're gonna do a lot of fighting,
So
and then explore the dead ends.
was gonna say, is this worse than exploring mementos in Persona 5, or would you rather have this?
Oh well, Persona 5 actually had like genuine dungeon design though,
Yeah,
like
but
in
I'm
the
just saying,
actual
like,
dungeon.
comparing that side content mementos dungeon crawling to.
Yeah, there's no randomized dungeons, so it's not like that. They're actually like designed.
Okay.
But so far they're just like go down the path. Oh, here's a dead end. Let me explore the dead end first. Maybe get an item and then come back to the main path. So it's just kind of like, I wish it was a little bit more interesting. What?
Sorry, I had to step out for a little bit. But did you like talk about the like how demon negotiation is
I
done?
I did not, and this is
Okay,
actually
well, here you
something.
go.
So far, I'm not feeling it. So, how do you recruit demons in any SMT game?
You simply
Usually,
talk to them.
usually you meet them in a battle and you talk to them and you do a little conversation. You give them items. Sometimes they ask for like HP or MP, and then they join you, or maybe they run away. In this game, that's not how you recruit demons, and there's no like persona like what in some of the persona games you have like cards that show up at the end or whatnot that you pick to get a demon or persona. But in this game, there's a system called Demon Recon, and it's once again it's kind of it sounds more complicated than it actually is. Whenever you enter a dungeon, any floor, anywhere, Ringo will set out your demons in your pool to random spots on that dungeon map. And then when you find them, they can either give you an item, they can give you HP or MP, or they can say, "Hey, here's a demon that wants to join you." And so that's how you get demons to join. Is you are going around the dungeons, you're looking at these places where one of your demon recon demons can show up. There's like certain spots they can show up, and then hope they're there with a demon to join you, because you don't want, if you're not looking for an item or an HP or MP, you're looking for one that has a demon to join you. That can sometimes take a while. And then hopefully it's the demon you want. And then if it is the demon you want to recruit, usually it's found from that dungeon. You give them one item, and then they will automatically join you. So the reason why I'm not really fond of this is because, how do I put this? The number of opportunities to recruit a demon is like greatly diminished compared to what it typically is. Like, let me just put it this way. Let's just say you're running around a dungeon floor looking for one of your demon recon demons with a demon to join you. You might be running around for 15 minutes and find like 3. In that same time, you might run into like 40 battles with plenty of demons that you, if it was worked the original way, you could have talked to them and recruited them. But no, it doesn't work like that anymore. You have to specifically find the demon recon demons with one who wants to join you and hope it's the right one.
So it's RNG to find the demon and hope it's not an item, and then RNG for it to be the demon you want.
Right. And the main thing is just like the number of opportunities, like literally like the number of dice rolls or whatever is way lower. Like here's just to be even more specific. I'm in a dungeon that has a shisha enemy. It's like a Chinese little dog dragon thing, right? And like in the same time that I'm looking around the demon recon points trying to find a demon with that demon to join me, I might have run into like 100 shishas. Like why can't I just talk to them and have them join
it's
me?
one of those weird things. Like they're really trying to experiment with like the formula. Like it's one of those things that's like if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like I feel like there's ways that they're trying to find a way to like reinvent like the Megaten formula in this game, which is somewhat admirable. But their solutions and alternatives are less intuitive. Like I'm usually all for that, but only if it makes sense and it's more intuitive. And in this sense, it's like it doesn't really make sense what they were going for here. Like if they were just trying to de-emphasize like having demons in the first place,
Like when you do find the demon you're trying to get, there is no real demon negotiation, and maybe that's what they're trying to avoid. Maybe they're like, some people just don't like demon negotiation, which it's true. Some people just don't like it.
Yeah, but it's like it feels like it's been like super streamlined, borderline dumbed down on like how Persona 5 and SMT 5 have done it. Like recruiting demons through negotiation. It's like really really painless compared to older titles. Like this feels more like of a pain than just like going the standard way. Like they might as well at this point just hand you the demon like with no sort of like justification behind it. If they're really so adamant to like respond to those sentiments of like anti-demon negotiation, because well, like I said, like it's okay for like if you want to get rid of that, but like at least introduce a system that makes even more more sense, more intuitive. Like,
Well, and to be clear, I'm not like I'm more put off. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. I'm more put off just by getting a demon. Like the opportunity to recruit one is just way lower. Like I know, like once you actually enter negotiation, it's really easy to get them to join you. But that's the problem, is finding that negotiation with the demon you want to have. So it's just kind of, I don't know if I'm feeling it.
you does this game have the demon compendium?
Yes, it does. So
Okay, so at least
I have actually, it's been gotten to the point where like, oh, here's a Makami demon that I want to recruit. If I want to go out of my way to try to recruit a Makami, I could either explore the dungeon floor, find a demon recon point, find one that has a demon who wants to join me, and then hope it's a Makami, or I can just go to the demon compendium or the demon fusion person and try to find it myself or fuse it myself, which is honestly usually way easier. It may be more expensive if you have to pull one out of the dungeon or out of the compendium or whatnot. So that's like the one thing about the game that I'm kind of most mixed on, is I don't like the demon recruiting. One thing I might try doing when I jump back into the game later today is bumping the difficulty up, because like I'm thinking to myself, I'm playing on normal mode. I always start with normal mode just to see how it's playing. But like, well, if the dungeons are going to be kind of boring and the demon stuff in the game battle system components are a little bit more simplified, maybe if I just turn the difficulty up, it'll become a little bit more engaging in terms of having to employ like maybe sharper strategies or whatnot. So I'll see how I feel, and then later in the game, I'll report back when it comes down back to review time for this, I suppose. So I'm not like wholly disliking the game. There's just a few small things here and there. I'm just like, not sure if this is my preferred way to do it.
Yeah,
So,
everything like I've seen and like from you playing it and like we've talked about, like it's just like kind of one of those things. Like I'm not like super down on the game, but there are already like kind of like almost like warning signs, like preemptive warning signs. Like I don't know if this is like a thing I really wanted for them to do in the game. Like in between how the demons work and like how just very dull the Soul Matrix environment looks, and how long you spend wandering it, and like and just like the general like weird flow of the game, and like how expansive the Soul Matrix is, like very early on, like and it's just I don't I don't know.
yeah,
I'm definitely gonna play it and beat it, but I have no idea at this point how I'm gonna feel about it.
I actually haven't really talked about this, but I don't want to say too much, but maybe I will just say too much anyway. So the Soul Matrix is sort of like this optional dungeon that you go through, where each character has their own like version of it, like Arrow, Melody, and Saizo, and they each have 5 floors. So there are 15 total floors of this dungeon, I believe. I might be wrong. And early on in the game, you get access to the first floor for each dungeon or for each character, and you go through each of them, and it takes maybe like, if you're pretty thorough in fighting enemies and getting demons and whatnot, 3 or 4 or 5 hours to go through these floors. And then I did like the main story dungeon, which takes, an hour or two. And then like the next floors of the Soul Matrix open up. So I'm like, I'm back here again for a couple of hours, I guess. And like, is that going to be the flow of the game? Or I'm like, Soul Matrix main story, Soul Matrix main story, Soul Matrix main story. Is that what it's going to be? I'm not sure. Seems like it. So we'll see.
Do the main story dungeons and the Soul Matrix dungeons have the same like visual?
No, the
environment?
Soul Matrix always do. It's like this abstracted cubish environment. There are a lot of like floating cubes everywhere. It's not like earthly. Whereas the main dungeon was a subway line.
It reminds me of like Chow. Chow? Did you play Fate Extra?
Only a little bit.
Do you remember like the kind of like the Matrix areas in that game, like the dungeon where it's like
Yeah,
it's all
I know what
blue
you're
cubes?
talking about.
That reminds me of those the dungeons aesthetically in
It's kind of like a
Harvestella.
wireframe
Yeah,
with cubes, kind of way to describe it.
yeah, it's sort of like that in Soul Hackers 2. That environment, it's just like it just I just wish there was I hope they like find ways to like make it more visually varied as you continue exploring it, because if that's just going to be what it's going to be like, um for the remainder of those floors, that's gonna suck.
Wow, color swap, guys. It's now red this time.
So far, I got to the second floor of each, and it doesn't look any different.
Oh boy!
So,
but despite how boring maybe the gameplay is, how is the music? I heard the Kenichi Okabe team is working on this, so
it's not Okabe specifically. It's like the studio that he founded.
Yeah, that's
right?
why I said team.
Yeah, Manaka is working on this.
Some of the music is pretty good. I actually specifically like the shop musics. There's several shops in the game. One's got like this sort of like vocal like Scatman type music. It's kind of fun, and one's got this more like lo-fi sort of vibe to it. And then there's some energetic battle themes and soothing other melodies here and there. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's very how they like outsource the music and.
It definitely doesn't feel like other games because it's not Meguro or I forget the name of the SNT5. I know Meguro did some there, but the other composer.
So sorry for getting already too. Now that you put it on the spot, but it's cool because like Meguro recently went freelance, a few months back, and off to go to do other pursuits, and he'll still be working at Atlas like on a contractual basis, like a freelancer sort of deal. But it is cool that like one of the first like big projects in which they branched off and like enlisted other composers for a project. It's very very like compelling. I've liked everything I've heard about the actual OST of this game so far.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool that you were able to give us a little bit of a preview impression on Soul Hackers, the things that you're feeling pretty good about, the things that you're not sure about with like the Matrix dungeons and things like that. Of course, that comes out in late August, so I don't remember exactly when the full embargo comes up for that game, but we'll revisit around then for full discussion on Soul Hackers 2. Obviously, Adam will get a chance to talk about it. I don't know if other people will get access as well, but we'll see. All right, I do have a window here for me and potentially James to talk about our ongoing adventures in Xenoblade 3. So obviously we still want to talk about this game in a spoiler-free or like as spoiler-light as reasonably possible environment as we can, because the game has only been out for like a week. I am at the section of the game that Adam and James really alluded to in probably a couple different podcast environments where the game is in, I think, 7 total chapters. Is that a spoiler? I don't know. I'm in
they specifically
chapter...
asked us not to reveal that in the embargo.
Oh, the thing is though, is that the chapters are like we've talked about how they don't really designate anything. There's nothing you can really glean from that number. It's completely arbitrary.
The game's fully out, so it doesn't really matter. But like,
right.
People should know, like, if they think that's a low chapter count, just know that like the chapters in Xenoblade 3 are far way longer than what chapters are like in previous Xenoblade games. So
especially after chapter 2.
Yeah, having that number alone doesn't actually like dictate
tell you
or, like,
anything,
signify of like how long the game actually is.
Well, so I'm in never consistent in video games.
Right. So I'm in chapter 3, which is like the second major environment of the game, but it's in the first part where the game opens up and says like, go have fun. And Adam and Josh, when they were previewing, had preview access to the game for Josh's review and for Adam's guides, which by the way, Adam has written several guides. So if you have any questions about Xenoblade 3, hopefully we've got it up on the site in terms of classes and CPs and EXP and unique monsters. And he's even made maps for that and all that sort of stuff. So go check it out. And I've played not all the Xenoblade games because I still haven't played Cross, but I've played, 1 and 2. And I'm still always just kind of impressed by like, you think that at some point I would get used to like the scopes of these maps and being like, yep, this is a Xenoblade game. But I'm like on the second map and I'm approaching like the 30-hour mark. My character's around level 50. And every single time I feel like I'm about to like, maybe I should progress the main story now. I'm like, wait, I now have, so Xenoblade 3 has the bonus EXP system that was, I think, first introduced in 2. I don't remember if it's in 1 and in Definitive Edition.
Definitive Edition has it because you can level down each expert mode in Definitive Edition, but baseline Xenoblade 2 did introduce it.
So every single time I'm like, all right, all the other areas are way too strong for me. I'm like, oh wait, I have 5 levels worth of bonus EXP, so I can just now I'm at par again. So now I can go up into this area. of this map that I had to avoid before because the enemies used to be 20 levels higher than me. And in a blink of an eye, not really a blink of an eye because I'm at like the 30-hour mark, I can now explore all this way. And it's like, Jesus. So I'm in the second map, which is Forness, which introduces you to characters like Ethel and Colonies 4 and 30 and things like that. But then it's like, oh, there's a whole ass desert on the east side of the map. Oh, there's a whole ass cave system on the west side of the map. And each one is taking me like hours to thoroughly explore, which is like this style of game. I've talked about this on the podcast in like a few different contexts where this like really sings to me. This is like my favorite type of RPG where the initial story premise of Xenoblade 3 is very, very straightforward. A character tells you that you should head towards a place, and that's pretty much it. And along the way, you learn about how the world works, and a few more mysteries are teased, and a lot of those things I don't know how they resolve. There was a scene in the second area where Uni comes across something very interesting that the game, like, very deliberately is meant to kind of confuse you and be like, what's that about? I don't know. So I can't even spoil it because I don't even know what it is. But I'm just totally like, all of my gameplay right now is just Wanderlust. It's just, what's up this way? I wonder if I'm strong enough to take on this Ignis unique monster. Nope, I am not. He kicked my ass. Well, maybe I'll go this way and come back when I'm stronger. Or maybe like I just got another hero that's another attacking type hero that uses like ether rifles, gray, and he like works really powerfully in chain attacks and things like that. So I'm like, maybe now I can take on this monster. Oh yeah, he was a lot easier now, and now I can explore behind him. And I know James, when he's been playing this, he's been like having, I don't know how to word this. When you do the reservations, that's a good way. When you do the side content, I know when I get back to the main story, I'm going to be completely overpowered. And I don't know how I'll feel about that at the time. But I'm kind of like putting it out of my mind right now because I'm having a good time just not focusing on the main story and just like exploring and just going around and trying to challenge myself. Like, oh, these monsters are 4 or 5 or 6 levels higher than me, but I think I can manage as long as I'm like have the right party composition and make sure that there's been a couple times where I swap out my hero and then like, oh shit, now I don't have a healer. Oh no, or things like that. I don't know. I was hoping that I'd come into this podcast today because last week we talked about Xenoblade 3 for an hour, in pretty glowing contexts in pretty much all respects, with a few like tiny nitpicks here and there. And I wanted to be like, all right, I'm going to bring something to the table where I'm going to put on my criticism hat and talk about something that, on a more serious basis, something that I feel like the game should be doing better. And I'm having difficulty coming up with things.
The game's economy is weird.
Yeah.
That's like,
think about your use for money in this game.
Oh yeah,
money,
and the
coins, ether cylinders. It's just kind of like odd, like the economy.
Yeah, so
it really is a nitpick. Like, it doesn't bother me that much, but it's just kind of like you get so much money that you rarely have to spend. You fill up on coins and gemstones and ether cylinders very quickly. There's not enough things to spend those on. So it's just kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm at the point now where I'm already ignoring ether channels because I'm capped out, and I've even found some extra like of those Hulk things that you have to recharge with those, but I'm like, nope, still don't have enough to spend. And now whenever I see a shop, I just like buy one of every accessory. I actually do appreciate there's a shop that you expend no pawn coins. I don't know why I struggle with that so much. Not pawn coins. And I'm like, hey, that's actually like stuff I don't know if I want to spend all these here. So I'll just buy 1 or 2 of the accessories and then wait, or something like that. So I am basically like, I haven't progressed very far in the story, but I am at the point now where like the premise is I've got the full party, I've got heroes, I've seen the full chain attacks and things like that. I actually understand how the chain attacks work. It is so interesting. When I was watching Adam play pre-release, I'm like, this makes absolutely no sense. What the hell am I watching with these like brave orders or whatever?
I told you, it's like you just do it a few times and then it's like, oh yeah, this is
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no problems.
And I remember the exact same thing with the Xenoblade 2 UI with like when you pulled in like your blades or the orbs, and like when you had the hero icon showing up on the left or the right side of the screen in order to chain together. It ends up making perfect sense. But yeah, I haven't progressed the story much. I've been just completely just having a blast, honestly, just wandering, exploring thoroughly, not bored at all. I don't know. Can't speak too highly of this game.
There's like a cathartic quality to it where like you just like want to wind down from like a really busy day, and there's like it is a very like viable like just chill out game for a few hours, just kind of just going off on your own doing shit. Like
I think the way you put it before, Brian, is it's sometimes nice when the game just sort of shuts up and lets you play. And
But the thing is, the nice thing about
3
Xenoblade is that
there's plenty
the
of custom
cutscene,
side stuff too. Yeah.
the cutscene direction, at least along the main story, with the side quests, you can tell they go more towards like canned animations, like where whoever the antagonist of the quest will say like, time to fight, and then everyone does their generic pull out their weapon animation like all at once, and that's a little bit like it's a side quest. It's fine, but like in the main story, like I remember even when Xenoblade 1 first released before the definitive edition, like man, they do like bespoke animations and like really interesting camera angles and cutscene direction and storyboarding. And so like if you don't want the game to shut up and really play, if you really aren't just enjoying the narrative, I could have just like beelined that and enjoyed that aspect of the game and have, the game opens with like 30 minutes of cutscenes. So it kind of has both in equal measure. So if someone asks the question like, what is the pacing of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 like? It's kind of like, well, it's in a lot of ways, it's kind of up to the player.
But,
for me, the pacing is.
That's with some caveats though. It's like after like the first like several hours, yes, yeah, it's up to you because it's very much like I was very put off initially at the very beginning. I was like, okay, right after the tutorial battle, you have that big 30-minute cutscene of them as like the younger kids and like what their training was like, and it's like, wow, this is very weird. Like right after the tutorial battle, and then you kind of have like that whole swath of like tutorials, step-by-step tutorials. Like it's not until you actually start unlocking colonies, your first colony, and then letting you do your thing in chapter 3 that like you can dictate the pace.
I will say that the field skills are I mechanically I like them a lot better, but narratively they almost feel like an obligation where it's like, oh, we have to have field skills because the last game had it, but we have to do them better this time. The first two that you get, I think one's story required and one isn't, but both of them are kind of just like, by the way, you can do this now, and there's not a lot of like context around it, and which maybe is fine. Like not everything has to be explained like within the context of the characters of the game narratively, but specifically the field skill that allows you to progress around the desert area more. It's literally just like, by the way, you should do it this way. Oh, okay, now we can do that. All right, now you can explore these new things. And it's just like, oh, why was that even a thing? Why didn't you just let me do that in the first place? Like, it didn't like have that Metroidvania aspect to it, where it's like, oh, now I can go back and do this. At least not in a way that I thought was very engaging. And that's just a nitpick. I almost feel like the game just doesn't. Field skills in Xenoblade 2 were criticized for good reason. And they were a hindrance and an annoyance to deal with. I almost kind of feel like having them in Xenoblade 3, even in the way that they are, the game doesn't benefit for having them. But that's kind of a nitpick. It doesn't really suffer for having them either. They just kind of feel there.
I kind of wonder, right? Because like if you had no field skills and you can like explore the map however you want, you would feel compelled to just like fully explore zones from the get-go in Xenoblade 3 and like prior Xenoblades, like that, the field skills are more like a mechanism, like less so narratively of like why they are there, why they should make sense. But I feel like they're just like a main mechanism to like kind of like control control your urge to like explore every single inch and centimeter of the world from the get go. Like imagine if there were no field skills, you would spend literally like 8 to 9 hours when you first enter a zone because you want to scope it out if you're that kind of player. Like me, I'm a sicko. I would do that.
That reminds me of a different game. In WoW Arms 2, when they introduced the search system where you're trying to press a square button.
A square all the time.
Yeah, I fucking hate that system, but yet it's in every game after they implemented it from 2. It sounds like the same logic to me.
Well, maybe they could have just done like, so the first field skill you get is vine climbing or whatever from Valdi, and I'm pretty sure you have to get that because it's on the story path. But they don't like explain it. Like I think there's like a throwaway line that he's good at climbing.
Yeah,
and
hey, maybe he's just good at climbing.
Well, but I think like it'd be kind of
because he's a nerd robot boy. You think he can't climb?
But I would say like maybe they could say like he like has like because he's an inventor, right? And tinkerer. Like maybe he like invented like grippy gloves or something like that. And he's like, by the way, you could borrow these. So I don't know. Even that would just be like instead you do his quest, you unlock him as a hero, and then it's like, vine climbing unlocked, and it's just very gamey. And I don't know, even if there was just a line like,
Okay,
"Oh, try put it." Go ahead.
You want real environmental storytelling? Think about when you first learn scree walking from Teach to go up sand. When you go up sand, you see Kevis soldiers up there to your left. Did teach those soldiers to walk up sand?
Mm, that doesn't
See,
make
really
sense.
makes you think.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I like
Are you
that.
are you just like not? Are you just like a blank slate? Like everyone around you knows how to scree walk and climb up vines already, but you are just a baby and you don't know
Well, it's kind
anything.
of like the
think the
classic
thing that fucks me
JRPG
up-
thing. Go ahead, James.
I think the thing that fucks me up is that there's like sections later on where it's like, oh yeah, you use the field skill for vine climbing to climb this. It's not vines, it's just like a grate, and it's like you needed to be taught how to climb that, even though it's basically no different from a regular ladder.
Yeah, you can climb up ladders, but you can't climb up grates until you have Baldi on your team. Or
Look, man, you try
because
to do that in real life. You try to climb up vines the same way you climb up ladders in real life.
I'm
And see how
telling you,
that
just
goes.
have Baldi give you like grippy gloves, and then there, I would have no complaints because you just have grippy gloves, and I can climb up all the things. I will say though, there's a section on
That's what
the
East games do.
yeah,
You
yeah,
like
even
some
East
gloves.
games are basically like here's a new icon in your menu that tells you why adult can climb vines now. Um, I will say though that on talking about the scale and scope of Xenoblade games and the environments, like there's a section in the left side of Fornus where like you just kept climbing up and up and up, and eventually you're like on this giant overhead walkway. And I think a lot of the Xenoblade games in several areas have done that. And it's just like, man, the verticality of these games, just even after having experienced it in both 1 and 2, and as apparently it's to an even a greater extent in Cross due to the scales, I'm just like, wow. Yeah, the game is not like fully open world, and if you travel from one region to another, like the loading screen actually is like distractingly long. But if that's like the trade-off for running this on an underpowered console, but still having the environments be as contiguous as they are for as the size that they are, I don't really have any complaints. Though there were a couple parts like when you met Teach in like his office for the first time. I don't know why, because it's a smaller environment, but for some reason I felt like that scene was like really pixelated. Like the dynamic resolution for some reason was really low in an interior environment, and it was like distractingly bad. And normally I'm pretty like ambivalent to a lot of like how well a game runs or how strong it looks, but in that game I'm just like, man, I wish I could just like upres this in some way. No wonder people are like looking up how this works on Cemu and things like that. Out in the environment, it doesn't actually bother me because I think like I calibrate it to like the scale of the game and what it's doing. But when it was in that interior little room and it was still like a low dynamic resolution, I'm like, man, I guess that's the trade-off.
That's look, man. The Nintendo purchase of Monolith Soft was, in some ways, just like the weirdest purchase at that time because Monolith Soft is just their imagination ambition knows no bounds. They're like, we're gonna make this thing run no matter what.
I will say
Every
though,
cost.
that I am pleasantly surprised at how fluid combat feels, even with like 7 characters on the screen. I remember like when that was first shown and announced, like, oh dear, how is this ever going to hold up? But like, I don't. It feels. I don't know. Like I thought it would be distracting. I thought it would be like really cluttered. I thought it would perform terribly, and it really hasn't. Maybe I'm just like a boiled frog at this point, but like all characters on at the screen at the same time, I acclimated to really quickly. It almost feels weird to think about. Oh, in other games you have to switch out people, right?
Where are you at right now, James?
Where am I at? I'm in chapter 5. I think I found my one major complaint with Xenoblade 3.
I think I know what this is. Go on.
Why the hell is level down something that's locked to New Game Plus? Because like I would be done with this game by now, but I've been kind of like caught in choice paralysis because I don't want to get too over leveled, but I want to do all the side content because most of the side content's good this time around. But if I do the side content, I get over leveled, which kind of takes the weight out of the story battles and whatnot. And it's like Xenoblade Definitive Edition, you could level down, so you could do everything and not worry about it. You could still like bring your levels down to make things not a joke.
I think that's only in expert mode in Definitive Edition. You have to like toggle that on, and then but they still allow you to do it.
You can do it whenever though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just
I don't know why they didn't do that for this game too. Oddly enough.
And it's like, I'm not the only one that's feeling this way. Like, I have a buddy of mine that just finished the game, and he said, yeah, I think that's like one of the biggest issue he has, because he finished the game and saw that unlocked, and he's like, why the hell is that a new game plus thing?
This isn't just like a Xenoblade issue, though. Like
Yeah,
in Final Fantasy 12, if you do hunts and explore optional zones, you can beat the final boss in 2 hits. In Final Fantasy 10, if you do the Celestial Weapon quest, you can beat the final boss in 1 hit.
I mean, it's not a new problem, Xenoblade 3 for sure, but people are definitely like, I can see why people feel like that, because Xenoblade 3 is like, sort of the first Xenoblade game that kind of has like really, really good side quests. To be
also, it feels like the game is kind of balanced around, if you don't do any side quests, you'll be perfectly on level for the main story. Yeah. It feels like it's very easy to get over leveled really quickly.
Yeah. It's like that meme that Pro CD made. It's like where he kills
when you meet the final boss after doing the side content.
Well, I think it's more frustrating and apparent in Xenoblade 3 because the level down mechanic is like right there, and it's been utilized. And it's like
it's a great out. Yeah, I feel that. I thought James was gonna go on because he's in chapter 5. There's like a certain thing that like
yeah. There's a certain mechanic. It's in a trailer now.
Yeah, it's in a
that
trailer.
boat has the jankiest controls for a boat I've ever felt in a video game. It's like, it's not bad because it feels like how a weighty boat should be, but it's also like, this area is so big. There's some sections where you need to be somewhat precise while moving it around to get through someplace. Why is it like that? Why can't I just turn it on a dime when I'm not moving? Why do I have to either be accelerating or reversing in order to even like fucking turn the thing?
I told James, I was like, it's weird to me how like you're like one of the first to complain about this, because I thought a lot more of my friends would like complain about this. Like that people I know who've like already gone way past that part but never mentioned or complained about it, because I remember I complained to you, Adam, when I first got to that part. I'm like, this button controls like ass. It feels better to control it in reverse.
I was actually just about to say that CD even said that. Like, I like controlling this boat in reverse. Easier somehow.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
regardless of those two issues, one probably
watch them patch the level down thing, and then it's just like, oh, that's fixed.
Yeah, but it's not going to do anything for me now. I'm just going to have to be over leveled, which is, oh well. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of nitpicks, and like, there are a few side quests that are still kind of shitty. Like, whoever decided to
make an alliance.
That, but also whoever decided to make the Xeon Ascension quest like that. I just want to talk.
I remember Josh and I were talking about that. That was like the first one we did, because it's one of the first ones that's available, and it's just like, I hope the other Ascension quests aren't like this, and they're not.
They're not, but man, that is quite an arc in that Ascension quest. It's like someone really hated I don't know, something.
Yeah, I think the thing that fucks me up with that is that the story for the Xeon Ascension quest is good. It's just, what you gotta do?
Like, the narrative is like funny actually, but the execution is like, why?
It's like, what's wrong with you? Get help. Seek help.
I thought it was gonna be like fucking Sakuna would come out into the game at that point. It's like, all right, let's go.
But yeah, I'll probably likely playing Xenoblade 3 for a good while longer. The next game I have on my personal radar. I was kind of interested in Digimon Survive as like a curiosity, but I got to watch Josh play a bit of it, and I'm like, maybe if like September is open, I'll squeeze it in. But now I'm just kind of like Xenoblade, and then I am still interested in Soul Hackers 2. But it'll be interesting to see what Adam thinks once he's able to get further into the game, if he thinks it holds up or not.
Sorry, I've forsaken Digimon preemptively.
And I still do like the idea of, once more people have played it, having a spoiler warning cast for later restores. I guess a spoiler cast for later revelations in that game. But that'll likely be in a month or so once people have worked their way through it, because it is a very long game and easy to get distracted and take a long time to get through it.
Before we head into like the shout outs and the news, I just wanted to mention real fast that in that same week when Xenoblade and Digimon Survive came out, the Square Enix also released the Octopath Champions of the Continent mobile game for global. So I kind of tinkered with that a little bit. I can't say I really like it because like it is definitely like it has a gacha system. It's a mobile game, but it's very much styled in the way of another Eden, same developers. So it does play more like a single player RPG. There's no like multiplayer elements or friends lists you have to like worry about. And there are like smart like kind of advancements to the Octopath formula. Just real fast, like the way they like set this up is really weird because like at the beginning of the game, I think the name of the continent Octopath sounds like Astera or something.
Yeah.
And they kind of go to the lore of like how the god how this god made Astera and whatnot. And like at the very beginning, like this mysterious traveler like finds like your character like at the start, but like you don't have like a player character per se. Like you summon like from a pool of 5 stars, guaranteed five-star character at the beginning of the game, and they're more like a vessel for you to move around more so than actually like be a character themselves. The main narrative element that like binds the player to like the villains, which are the main focus of the game, is like this ring. It's kind of like this Lord of the Rings thing, and like there's this ring of power, divine ring of power that you possess, and like the 3 big main villains possess as well. So instead of unlike how the original Octopath Traveler on Switch, which later came to PC and Xbox Game Pass, um, instead of like you having those 8 separate characters that are different paths and like you can progress them like however you wanted to, the main downfall being these characters really never acknowledge each other's existence throughout it. This one is just like it kind of doubles down on that where like your party doesn't really matter. They don't acknowledge each other. The only time you ever interact with these characters is like through their like side stories and like it's weird because you can do like the first chapter of side stories for characters that you don't have, and like after the end of that side story's first chapter, and say if you want to know more, go roll them. Basically, it's like okay,
I'm
thanks.
surprised they don't give you like a basic version of them, like an R version. Like here's the basic, whatever.
Nope, nope,
Huh.
because the SSRs have like it's weird. Like say the SSRs have a version of them where you can roll for them as the full 5 star, or a version of them where it's 4 star, but there's like an empty 5 star slot, and people will refer to that as like a 4.5 star. Or like you can upgrade them to their full 5 star. It just requires a lot of like late game grinding to get there if you want to earn that, or you can just like naturally by luck roll their 5 star variant, which is very much like how Another Eden did it. Like there's not anything new for that developer. It's the way they've designed it. Like that is a little frustrating, but that's what it is. I mean, at least there's a way to do it in the game. But yeah, that's just how those side stories are. The main focus, and when you're going through the main story, is like you're sort of like taking like a spectator role into like what these villains are doing in their respective towns. There are these 3 big villains. So like in this game, there's like 3 main towns, and like in the Octopath Traveler, like there's like a series of like pathways to travel in between the towns. And once you discover the towns, you can fast travel to them, and you can like progress like their chapter 1s, their chapter 2s, their chapter 3s, and so forth. And then you kind of just like see installments of like, hey, this villain that embodies wealth is like seeing taking a look like how she's exploiting her workers, and there's like a whole slave trade and human trafficking uh, story behind that. While in the villain that represents power is you basically have this tortured soul, sort of like an alchemist almost, who's been blackmailed to like perform human experimentation, like almost make them like zombies, and like I assume that's like progressing to a plot to like try to find immortality through that. So it flows a little bit better than how Octopath Traveler did it, because it kind of makes no it doesn't make any excuse of like of the player themselves having any agency. It just basically takes the shift off of them and like tries to make more compelling stories of like the actual worlds and stories themselves, while the player is just more of a spectator role, and like the characters that they have are sort of just like they're more of a sideline, but at least like you can still like you interact them with them in the way that like you're like helping out like these rebels rebel against like this evil ruler.
Well, in the context
Versus,
of a game where you roll for characters, having that sort of framework where it's like, yeah, these characters don't really interact, but they're not supposed to, actually kind of makes a lot of sense. Where in Octopath
yeah,
Traveler, they're just like 8 heroes who live in the same place but never talk. Hooray! But
yeah,
here it's a
yeah,
little bit more gamey, and you kind of have to just like let it lie. But
yeah.
people will approach every battle with different rosters depending on who they happen to roll, and the game
It
is
does
just
have
like, go ahead.
yeah, it does have like the talent, like the skills as well, right? So like instead of like some have like the wealth affinity, some have like the fame affinity, some have like the power affinity. So like every like in Octopath, any NPC that you come up to, you can interact with them, and some you can interact through that wealth affinity, some with the fame, some with power. So like say a character NPC that you can interact with, like, the power affinity, like they have certain items, so like you can actually challenge them to a battle, and if you win, you get their
Well, I
yeah.
forget. Did the base Octopath go with wealth, fame, power?
I don't think
I
it
know.
was
I
the
know.
exact same. Yeah, I don't think it was exactly those, but it's very similar. Like Fame, for example, like this has like the reputation system in towns, like Octopath did. So like if you negotiate with someone, hey, I want this item, there's like a RNG chance based on like your fame affinity of like getting this item for them. If
I remember. Like
if you
Therion
fail that
could
check.
steal, Oberic could duel.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
forget some of the other ones. Like, what could Hanet
But
do? I don't even
I
remember.
think Tressa can like negotiate and like barter with them, I believe.
Yeah,
I forget.
the character that I picked as like my starting main or whatever was Therion. Therion.
Nope,
Mhm.
it was
So
the Huntress. Was it Hannat or something like
Yeah,
that?
Hanit. Yeah, I forgot exactly what they all did. I forgot if they ever overlapped as well. I forgot if they were all unique or like they actually had like was working off of like a one or two. But yeah, it has that sort of system that Octopath did. So like there is ways to interact with NPCs like that. Obviously, with wealth, you can just buy stuff off of NPCs for like any equipment that you need, that they have, and so forth. So it does have
oh,
like some of the Octopath DNA in it.
sorry. I on a different monitor. I've been pulling it up. They're like paired, if I remember right. Like Hanet can
Right.
provoke, and which is similar to Olberic's, and then like Therion and Tressa's were like functionally the same. Because you could have a party of 4, and that way you could kind of cover all 4 bases,
Oh
even though like
yeah, yeah,
the exact reason, uh, the exact I guess flavor was kind of written to match the character. So it
yeah.
sounds like in the mobile game they just kind of retooled that under this new wealth, fame, power paradigm as well, which is that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. And as you're completing quests and doing stuff, you're like constantly like leveling up like these influences as well. But they like you can have like fame level 3, your power level 5, and wealth level 6 or something. And as you're leveling these up to like gain you like passive upgrades, like you'll get like your physical attack up for higher power levels, and then like for wealth, if you level that up, you can like sell things at a higher price when you visit markets or like sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And then like fame, like I forgot what fame does, but one of them is like increased walk speed and so forth. So you know there is like certain systems behind the scenes that like you get like passive progression as well, that's like party wide. And I think the most interesting thing about this game that will, I imagine, will go into like theoretical future Octopath game is like that the game, you now go into battles with 8 characters instead of 4 like in the original one, and like swapping between them doesn't consume a turn. So like say you can have like a character like attack, and then like the next character you can like switch on over to like their other character, and then choose from their like repertoire of skills and without consuming a turn. So you just kind of like just swap positions as their turn goes up. So it kind of makes battles way more fluid because your backline is like restoring HP, SP, and their boost points in that turn. So you always have like um options available to you, offensive and defensive options available to you. So everyone is like kind of doing their part, whether they're like saving up boost points for like a big attack or like being proactive and like healing like the front line. Like there's sort of synergies like that. Like if you have this character in the back line, they will like passively give their front line person an HP. Like that could be a character trait for one of the characters. So it like battles aren't just like a pushover. It's very much that Octopath. Hey, you have to discern, like find out the enemy's weakness, and then as you're hitting weaknesses, you'll take out down this break number, and then once you have them broken, you'll do a lot of damage, and they'll be like stunned for a turn as well. So it is very like on paper it is very much like almost Octopath Traveler 2, just in this mobile game gacha format, which is not amazing, but
Well,
it's
Here's a
doable.
question. So
What's up?
is there like an actual like completed story here, or is it like being updated with like chapters or whatnot?
It does have like content, like story updates over time. I know in the Japan version they like finished their first arc several months ago, so they're like in a new story arc. So there is an actual end to these arcs, from what I understand. And then there's like side activities too that are like like the like another Eden. All the content updates and all the side stuff that they add is all permanent. So like the arena, like the challenge arenas, that are pretty difficult, but you can earn a character from them, and like any other side activities that you do, they're not limited time. But like the special collab gotcha banners, like with Nier, Bravely Default, and I think now Triangle Strategy, like those are limited time, but everything else seems to be permanent.
From what I've heard from friends that have played the Japanese version, you don't need any of the banner stuff for anything story related or even to get through the game comfortably. It's all
Mhm.
just like if you just want to play the game and deal with the story, it's basically all free from what I've heard.
I guess I can't really speak to like how like late game stuff is, because there's a meta like always, and I don't know exactly like if there's certain content that's like it's like just very very difficult if you only run like low rarity stuff. I'm sure people have done it, but like it's like maybe more of a grind than people are willing to
For
go
me,
through.
it's like the way you describe this. I don't know if I've just been spurned by actually trying your reincarnation and then
Mhm.
watching you play FMA and other things. Where I'm like, as much as I liked Octopath Traveler, despite its flaws, what this really makes me excited for is a proper Octopath 2. Whatever they learn from this game, being able to like
Yeah.
a character party, changing how they factor in the story so that they can have like the same level of freedom that they did before. Maybe having Octopath 2 take some ideas from the mobile game and incorporate it without the gotcha, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, this is the
Yeah,
shit. But
I think the foundation is there for them to like for Octopath 2 to like be really something cool if they take the right lessons from this game, because
Mm,
I think this game is like on some level a lot of experimentation too for what they want the next entry to be.
mhm. Well, thanks everyone for talking about your experiences with the games in the last week and the last month, and especially Josh, since you kind of seem to carry the torch on most of these games this week, as me and James are sucked into Xenoblade. But we will follow up on all of these games as we go forward and into later into the month of August, and look forward to Soul Hackers. Are there any other like August releases that we're looking forward to, or is it kind of Soul Hackers or bust? Let me pull up
SD
Adam's.
Gundam,
Oh yeah, the SC Gundam Battle Alliance. I
I'm
think there's
actually
a,
really looking forward to that. They keep on showing off new trailers and suits coming, and I'm like, man, this game's really fun. I enjoyed the demo, so I'm actually really really looking forward to it.
So we'll have that on one of the upcoming episodes of the podcast as well. For shout outs, there's not a ton here. The main one that I've already kind of given is that we have gotten a lot of primers and guides up on the site for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Adam has been the majority of the effort behind those. So Adam has kind of like digested the game down into like an encyclopedic science. So even as I've been playing through it, I've been kind of keeping tabs and trying to make sure that all those guides are as up to date and accurate as possible. And it's a massive game, so Adam really put in a lot of effort to that. So kudos to him. Alex Donaldson also did put up a feature about Golden Sun. Golden Sun, this is a little bit of a tangent and kind of out of nowhere, but it did have its 21st birthday, I believe, in the last week. And basically it was just talking about, obviously that was produced by Camelot, published by Nintendo, and that studio is now working primarily on like Mario Golf and tennis titles, about the potential for that series returning, since it's been over a decade since Dark Dawn. A little bit of wishful thinking, but we can always hope and dream. As for our main story, this is something that I don't think should surprise anyone. Guys, they're making a remaster for Tactics Ogre. They just announced it this week. Have you heard?
That's out of nowhere.
Nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
Okay. Exactly. How did this news drop? What time? And this was
Midnight Pacific time.
yeah.
so
what day was that? It was like in the middle of the week. Like what?
So it was like a Tuesday night. Let's see, August 4th, Wednesday night. It was like a Wednesday night, like you said, midnight Pacific time. Just a blog post. Did it even have a trailer? It did have an announcement trailer.
Yeah, it
okay.
did.
Yeah.
All right, so we did get a 1 minute 45-second announcement trailer. Of course, if you haven't been following this story, the reason why we're taking the piss on this announcement a little bit is because Tactics Ogre Reborn has leaked in 3 or 4 different fashions over the last year. First appearing on a GeForce leak along with several other Square Enix things, showing up on a classification board, showing up on a PlayStation Store listing, probably something that I'm forgetting, and all the while never actually being formally announced by Square Enix. It's been formally announced now. It is a thing. The November 11th date that was shown on the store listing has been confirmed. The consoles have been confirmed. It's coming out for PlayStation 4 and 5 and Steam, which we could kind of have gathered from the fact that it had a... Yeah, I was getting to that. Sorry. I was getting to that. I was saying that the PC release wasn't a surprise because it showed up in the GeForce listing. The PlayStation release wasn't a surprise because it showed up on the PS store page and the PS, like the deals website, whatever it was. It is also getting a Switch release. I don't know if that had specifically leaked from the classification board or whatever, but anyways, it's formally announced now. A lot of the details that were already like scraped off the store page have been confirmed, like the redone sprites, the new voice acting, the new UI elements. In the official announcement, one thing that they've also really tried to like put a decent amount of focus on is that like the sound effects have also been remastered as well. So characters, backgrounds, obviously voice acting, UI elements, sound effects. We also learned. Go ahead, Chad.
I was gonna say, you know how the main character always says "fight it out" when you start a mission? They said they're gonna bring full voice acting now. Are we gonna still hear the "fight it out" that sound very generic back in the day, or are we gonna get the actual professional voice actor to say that "fight it out" line?
I don't know if that line's actually like a voice line though. Like that's just kind of a
You know what?
a UI thing.
Yeah. I don't know if they.
You get the Smash Bros. Announcer.
Fight it out.
We also learned a little bit about the addition. First of all, this is getting a physical release on Switch and PlayStation, so that's kind of cool. It will have pre-order bonuses for both the regular edition and the digital deluxe edition. I don't have the news post has it all boiled down, but all of the pre-order
just a soundtrack.
The digital deluxe is a soundtrack, and then like the pre-order bonus is like soundtrack sampler. If you pre-order the digital deluxe, you get like a sampler of the 1995 soundtrack as well, specifically. Yep. So all the bonuses for the game are soundtrack related. The base game otherwise is, I believe, $49.99. Do I have that right? Yeah. Yep. So physically and digitally. I don't know. So a lot of these details we kind of were lucky enough to already know. We kind of just discussed our like what we like and dislike about what we've seen with the leaked screenshots and things like that. I don't know if anything really here has been new enough or changed since we last discussed our feelings on Tactics Ogre Reborn.
Some people are upset at the price, which is fair.
Yeah,
but it is like they are adding a ton of voice acting and UI like and AI like elements and changes and whatnot. So there's kind of a weird like almost like lose-lose situation here where if Square Enix puts out a game like Chrono Cross, prices it low, but then like barely makes any updates or changes to it, people criticize that. And then like a game like this where they price it higher, make a bunch of changes to it, people criticize the price. So we'll see how those changes actually functionally manifest and once we actually get our hands on it. But
People
You know,
complain
it's a
about
fair
everything.
criticism.
They
$50.
they still didn't confirm or deny whether you'd have to be able to toggle the sprite filter on or off. So
They did say that I forget the wording, but they're like the sprite art is preserved. It's like, are you sure? About
It's
that?
like
Yeah, they look washed out. Like someone, it's like that restoration with the Jesus, with the painting where it looks like a monkey. They just smudge everything the same. It looks better.
God damn it.
If we were still doing our old style thumbnails, I'd totally make that our thumbnail or something.
That is so good.
That could at least be our podcast title or something. Just restored Jesus. I don't know.
Or Jesus. I don't know. Will we get in trouble for that? But that's the title.
I don't even think I canceled.
That'd be so funny. Restored Jesus. I like the only other real thing that like substantial thing that has come out of this that we already didn't know is like, hey, Alexander Smith Studio is back on for the localization that they confirmed earlier this morning, which is really cool.
Yeah,
I wonder what they're working on because
it's not clear if it's Go ahead.
Yeah, like is it new content? Is it just like voice direction? Like what's up?
Yeah, like or maybe just a script edit, like just going through it again. Because sometimes if you add voices to it, you're like, oh, maybe we have to change this line a bit to make it, Sometimes when you add voices, you have to like adjust lines to make it sound better when it's spoken. But I don't know. We don't know. But yeah, the original translator and localizer on it is back on the remaster. So we'll see.
But yeah, so November 11th. What did I say it was? 11?
Well,
Same day
yeah,
as
no.
Valkyrie Elysium on PC.
Yeah, I was like, it clashes with another Square Enix thing,
and it's like a week after Harvestella and 2 weeks after Star Ocean.
Wow, Square Enix like just cannibalizing themselves. Man, this whole year has been like Square Enix, not AAA releases, but like I don't know.
The Square Enix in the past has always had a tendency just to release a lot, even if you don't realize it. Like they've been on Metacritic lists for like most releases in a year several times. But I feel like this year is just even. I wonder what the count's going to be. It's going to be nuts. The only caveat to the Metacritic list is they count multiple like SKUs independently. So if it like releases on 3 platforms, they count it as 3 releases. But still, yeah. Anyways, this fall RPG season brought to you by Square Enix.
Yeah, but like I'm not going to try to go through every single title, but we've already had like Triangle Strategy and Stranger of Paradise like already this year.
There is like I mean tangentially like for Square Enix developers this week they did release the financials but in Japanese. I don't know if Adam wanted to put any like comment on it or just wait for the English.
Yeah, so they put out their first quarter financials and everything is down. I think the best way they profited was like on the exchange rate, I guess. However that works out because the yen is so weak, they actually made like I forget if that's ordinary operating profit, but it's like the profit unrelated to their operations. I guess that's ordinary. But they had their Q&A, which they always do every quarter, and they haven't put out the official like publisher translation of it, but they're like considering doing like joint ventures in their studios, which what that means is they'll take one of their studios and then like another publisher or company can basically provide capital to that studio and also basically reap part of the reward, like some part of the profits. So it's like, is this something they're going to do with Luminous or something?
Oh yeah,
who knows? So they haven't done anything yet, but they're like considering like joint ventures.
It was definitely like a weird financials period for them because like I'm curious to see what their financials will look like when they encompass this period, right? When they encompass like the latter half of 2022, when like fucking everything comes out, like what is that going to look like?
Yeah, so this recent quarter would have been April through June, which actually Square Enix didn't have a whole lot in April through June. So perhaps it's not too unsurprising that their numbers were down. But yeah, it's weird. Like I don't think they mentioned NFT stuff at all this time, though.
That's crazy.
Hooray!
2021 was a big year for the metaverse, or whatever it was.
That's how they started the new year. Like, okay,
yeah. I wonder what's their New Year's message next year.
Please buy the Cloud NFT from the figure shop.
Yeah,
all right. And then we didn't even we talked about Harvestella and Star Ocean and Tactics Ogre remaster and what was the fourth one? Valkyrie.
We talked about Valkyrie.
There's also Crisis Core Reunion somewhere
and Dio Field.
Romantic Saga.
Minstrel Song.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Minstrel Song. That's not dated either. Jesus.
Nope.
What date was the Front Mission remaster?
Oh yeah, Front Mission. Although that's technically not published by Square Enix. It's kind of weird. 'Cause it's like Frontier
smaller title.
Entertainment. So
Thank you, Square
it's like
Enix, for all
Square
this
Enix.
bread.
It's like Square Enix licensed out the IP, and it's literally being developed and published by like Frontier, even though it's a Square Enix IP. So kind of an awkward situation. But yeah, that's supposed to be summer, and it's already August, so it's like,
Man, we've completely forgot about Front Mission, guys.
I always forget it because I just assume it's delayed in my head.
Yep.
The other major RPG news from this week is another Nintendo RPG property, and that, of course, is Pokemon. We had the Pokemon Presents with new details about Scarlet and Violet. And okay, guys, I did not pay attention to this when it first was announced, the news. But before this podcast, I was like, all right, I'm going to read up on this. I'm going to watch the trailer. I want to be able to speak to it as an authority on this. And I just I don't think I've ever read like new details on a game and lost interest so quickly. I had a hard time making it through this. So Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, we got introduced to a lot of the characters. We got a new trailer. The trailer was very interesting in how it opens up by saying like there is voice acting in this trailer, but it is not present in the game or something like that. It showed like a lot of the areas of the new region. It showed a few new Pokemon, but not a lot. And it went into detail on this terastalization. I have no idea what you call this. Basically, the new gimmick for this generation of Pokemon, where they take on like the appearance of a gemstone, and it's kind of like Mega Evolution or Gigantamax, where it can take place only once per battle, and you have to recharge it. When I looked at this new Terastal Phenomenon thing, I could not find any interest in it. I don't know if you guys took away anything a little bit more positive on this, but to me, it just seemed like a complete gimmick.
There's one angle of it that makes me really interested about it is because terastallization can come in different types. Like normally, Pikachu's an electric type, but if some Pikachu's, if they terastallize, they might retain their electric types, or some might like turn into flying, or some might turn into water type. Like the example they gave in the trailer is like an Eevee is usually a normal type, but some Eevees can, if they terastallize, they'll turn into water or grass type. And think about like the competitive scene of Pokemon, and like how that will shake up like the competitive scene of like especially one-on-one Pokemon battles, of like when they place out a Pokemon and they terastallize, they have to account for like, oh, this Pokemon might just change into like a completely different type in the middle of combat. Do I have tools to counter that once they terastallize?
It sounds very broken and unbalanced.
Yeah, I mean, it does, but it also kind of makes it interesting too. But that's from an outsider's perspective, like from a spectator's perspective. I don't play competitive Pokemon, but if this mechanic is enough to like kind of switch up that dynamic, that'd be interesting as a spectator to see. That's how I think about it. But it looks really cool in the way that like they make the Pokemon's textures into like a gemstone type. I think they kind of look like toys almost during it, like a Christmas ornament. But it's an interesting twist from that competitive angle to me. I don't really know or know if like what the bigger ramifications are. Maybe you can weigh in, James, because you know Pokemon. I don't know Pokemon, but James does.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a Pokemon expert. I kind of fell out of Pokemon pretty hard at like Gen 6, Gen 7, and I only kind of started getting a bit more into it with the Sword and Shield DLC and Legends Arceus. So I don't know what's up with the current like competitive or anything like that. I would imagine that it'll eventually kind of consolidate towards here is the meta Tera type for the meta team. So while there might be people that try and deviate from that, it's just going to end up being like if you're playing competitively, chances are you have this type for this Pokemon. So like it's going to be more interesting for the casual players, I feel like, even if like I guess there'll probably be like a bit more time before the competitive scene decides what's the meta type, because there's like if like we don't know like how many different types of Tera types each Pokemon can have, if they can just have any typing.
Yeah, because like there'd just be like 18 total types, but we just don't know like if that'll be available to every Pokemon or some Pokemon, and what limitations are there in the game. So that'll take quite a bit of time to like kind of scope out, I imagine. And it's also kind of cool too that like when they were talking about Tera Raid Battles, because some of these rarer Pokemon are some Pokemon have like rarer Terra types, and you can like you go through like a competitive raid battle with others to do them. So up to 4 players can go through these raid battles and have a chance to capture them. The cool neat thing is like you don't have to wait for other players to end their turn. Like everything is like on a cooldown basis. So like after you use an attack, you only have to wait for your cooldown to finish to act again. You don't have to wait for Jim to spend 5 minutes and be like, do I want to attack or do water gun? I don't know. It's like, well,
And James, in the
Jim.
old raid battles, like I've watched people do raid battles, but like only infrequently. Is it completely turn based? Like if it's someone else's turn in a raid battle, you just got to wait for them to act.
Everyone chooses what they want to do, and then it does the turn order based off of the speed and whatnot.
So it's like round based.
Yeah, but you still have to wait for them to make that make their decision. So this is an interesting like kind of mix up to it, and you can plan around it too, right? Because if you'll act right away after your cooldown, you can like actually like time like party heals if it'll allow that, or sort of like support type buffs and debuffs and like status of liquid changes.
Now I'm thinking like ATB Pokemon.
Yeah,
that'd be kind of interesting.
Wrong.
I wonder, since max raids are back, if they're going to have max raid dungeons, because I know that the Sword and Shield DLC had that feature, which was pretty nice, where it was like you borrow a Pokemon and then go into like a series of raid battles, and there's like branching paths to get to the end and like fight a legendary Pokemon, and like you have a chance of capturing it and whatnot. Like that was a really cool feature from the DLC for Sword and Shield that I ended up enjoying quite a bit. So if max raids are back, I do wonder if we're
Terra
going to see
Raids
something.
or whatever they call them now.
Yeah. And the other big news out of this is, hey, your legendary Pokemon seemed like they join you early in the game, and they're your vehicles to traverse the open world.
Yeah, I saw that, and I thought that was interesting.
I don't know necessarily if you get them that early, or if they were just showcasing them to let people know that there is like an additional traversal mechanic.
Good point. Yeah, I don't know. It seemed early, but maybe you're right. Just maybe for marketing purposes. I do enjoy
my favorite part of the trailer is when there's 4 players, because obviously this game is multiplayer, which they didn't really touch on that a ton, like specifically how it worked. I don't know if it was buried in the press release, but it showed like all 4 characters on their like legendary bikes, and I'm just like, it feels like they've just been demoted. Like, yes, you are now the mascot legendaries of this gen. You are demoted to traversal.
Can we just appreciate, or I guess not appreciate, kind of like point out how Koraidon is probably one of the most pointless legendaries of all time? It's like,
what do you mean by that?
It's the ancient one, like the non-futuristic dragon thing. It has wheels. It doesn't use them.
Yeah, because they like throughout the trailer they show like the animations for Koraidon and Miraidon. Like they have different like traversal animations. So Koraidon is like more animalistic. So like when you ride it, it like uses like its feet and arms to like kind of like maneuver around like in a more animalistic fashion. So it has the wheels, but it doesn't use them. It just like kind of goes around and waddles around like that. Meanwhile, Miraidon's like, I'm gonna turn to a fucking motorcycle, and you literally just fucking turn into a vehicle and like go through it. That's how it is. Like it does it like in a Mario Kart fashion too. So like when it goes to like water mode, like Koraidon like dog paddles through water, while Miraidon's like, I'm a hovercraft now, bitch. And it's fucking hilarious. Actually, that was the funniest part of the trailer for me. Is like kind of, I'm like, why would anyone want to get Scarlet now for Koraidon when Miraidon is like seems like 10 times cooler to traverse around? I don't know.
It would be a Mario Kart collab with Pokemon.
I feel like Scarlet people, I don't know. They seem pretty suspicious now if they go Scarlet after this trailer.
We also got a couple new Pokemon. It seems like the star of this show was Fido, which is like a dog. Fido, which is like dog dough, literally dough, Dough. So like a dog pastry. He is a fairy type, but he is both firm and soft at the same time, apparently.
Its ears are donuts.
Yes. We also got a poison type Wooper, which is just a regional variant.
I feel so bad for that Wooper. I have a buddy of mine that he was watching the trailer, and as soon as that Wooper variant came up, it's like, no, why? Why'd you make it brown? Now everyone's just gonna call it Pooper.
Yep. And they also have Titan, Terra Whale Pokemon. I don't know. It's like a spiky ball, but has limbs.
Yeah, I was gonna say like what I don't know what animal is this. I don't know what to describe this. It's like a land whale with armor and spikes. It's ice type though, so that's kind of interesting. But I saw someone say, I think it was Cerebi, maybe Joe Merrick, like we've learned about 10 completely new Pokemon, and everything else has been a regional variant, and 2 of the 10 are legendaries and 3 are starters. I don't know if that's the normal cadence on Pokemon releases or if that's lower. It feels lower, but I guess I don't know for certain.
It really depends. It feels like it kind of changes depending on the generation. Like I remember like Gen 5, they really started, well, not Gen 5, Gen 4, they really started showcasing new Pokemon like early on. But I guess part of that comes down to the fact that I think Gen 4 was delayed a year. So they probably had plans and whatnot.
Gen 4 also did a lot of the new evolutions for existing Pokemon, so that's kind of a nice marketing angle. That's when they did like Electivire and Tangrowth, I think, and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in this game, mostly for the multiplayer aspect and like the open world nature of it. Like the opening trailer for this, it does really like have it evokes the same feelings that Arceus did. And Arceus I thought was kind of a fine little template, but I think it did lose its luster kind of quickly. It'll be interesting to see if a more traditionally styled Pokemon game, but still with some of that in mind, might be.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I really got into Arceus. I kind of went crazy with it, honestly. But it'll be interesting to see how I feel about this one, because I think aspects of Arceus that very specifically weren't traditional Pokemon were some of the things I enjoyed the most. And as a result of this being a more traditional Pokemon, there's some like quality of life changes that they've kind of reverted. Like in Arceus, you could catch or battle a Pokemon, then it's just a seamless, okay, you get your XP, you're already moving, and it's like you could like throw a Pokeball at a Pokemon and just without even checking, just start moving away. And if it gets caught, it gets caught. You get the XP, you get the Pokemon. It's seamless. That's not in this. Like if a Pokemon levels up and whatnot or gets experience, it's like there's a very specific pause, like in the older games, where it's like you have to wait for that to go through before you can continue and whatnot. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it feels better to be a little bit more traditionally like paced in that sense, or if it would be like, oh, I wish it worked like it did in Arceus. In Arceus, there was a few things where like I thought it was interesting, like the sheer quantity of Pokemon that you caught, and like a lot of the way the Pokedex worked in that game was to incentivize that. It's like I want to catch. You wanted to catch several copies of pretty much every Pokemon in the game if you wanted to fill your Pokedex up. And the traditional games, from my memory, having not played one since Gen 4, admittedly, didn't have a ton of, like, if you had one that was a good nature, that was kind of pretty much all you really wanted to catch multiple Pokemon for, was to get the correct nature. But it'll be interesting to see how if Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is really trying to shake things up and take the best lessons from the Sword and Shield DLC and Arceus, if it really changes it up and is kind of like the shot in the arm that some people have said the series have needed. Also a November release, like November 18th, so squeezed in between and after all that Square Enix deluge of stuff the month before.
I don't know. Pokemon's got to be shaking, being in the shadow of Tactics Ogre.
So one of those early November releases from Square Enix that was first revealed back in late June is Harvestella. So there's been a few updates to this game since its initial announcement earlier in the summer. One of which was people have done some sleuthing on, I believe, the Australian classification board, and they saw that the developer of this game is being published by Square Enix, and they haven't like formally announced this, but based on the classification listing, it is being developed by Livewire, who is the studio behind Ender Lilies, which I know Chow and Adam played, I think, last year, and both thought pretty highly of. So it's kind of cool that they're now working with Square Enix on this title. The update here to Harvestella, which is releasing on November 4th, detailing the city of, what was it? Nemea,
Nemea.
which is like the city of eternal spring, like it's always blooming there. And talking about some of the characters that you meet there, one of which is the teacher. What was her
The
name?
teacher name is Istina.
Astina.
And she's like a manages like or works at a orphanage or contributes to orphanage in town. So she's like one of the characters you'll get to meet. I assume she'll be like an ally as well. In fights. I'm not sure if she joined you in battle or not. But she's like being like a Rune Factory type game. I assume you can like probably date her. Um, also, this update shows a new job in
The
battle.
Skylancer.
Yep, Skylancer. It's funny because like when they first showed off the classes, it's like here's your fighter and here's your mage, and also you could be a Shadow Walker. It's like, oh, all right, okay, sure. And then now you can be a Skylancer, and this is obviously a lance in battle. It has wide sweeping attacks to deal with multiple enemies at once. They showed off a little bit more like the crops that you can grow. They have like fun little names for common crops that we grow in the real world. Like strawberries are straw buddies, cucumbers are cucumbles, and then
I'm excited for this.
yeah, it looks really neat. So yeah, it's kind of just a little bit more info about on the upcoming release for this game. I just thought it'd be fun to share as it ahead of its November 4th release.
I do like on this, a lot of this information comes from basically Square Enix's website and just a blog post that was published on the 3rd. And I like how they're like daily life, fishing, daily life, like getting spring produce, and then like daily life shipping, how you can like take everything and like you earn money by shipping fruits and vegetables that you harvest from your fields, and you can use machines to process your goods to sell them for an even higher price. And I don't know,
it sounds like Rune Factory on steroids.
It almost feels like Factorio almost, where it's like, yeah, you can be a quaint little farmer, but we're now a shipping industry. We ship our cucumbers all over the planet.
All right, Chow. As the Rune Factory expert, what's your read on Harvestella? Do you think it's going to be better than Rune Factory 5?
I put an 80% chance of it will be.
Dang.
But it doesn't have romance, right? Or it hasn't been confirmed.
It has like we don't know if there's actual romance, but there's like character stories that you can get to learn more about the character.
If you can date the MILF, it automatically is 100% better.
Excuse me. Say that again, Chow. Verbatim.
No.
What? If you can date the MILF in the Rune Factory games, it would have been a god tier game, but you could never do it.
Obviously, the podcast title has got to be "Can you date the MILF?"
We'll
yeah, I'm sure
consider it.
that'll be good. Yeah, I'm sure that it'll go great with the
Yeah,
with the
but
search queries.
in this like blog post, there's an icon of a UI element showing Astina and like your affinity level with her. So chances are over the coming months we'll be introduced to other characters from the town, and probably kind of do that normal like Rune Factory roster of people that you can probably date, though we don't know for sure. But yeah, this game looks really charming and really relaxing. No new footage other than the initial trailer, but a lot of new screenshots in this blog post. And then another blog post for another game coming out in September. This is Made in Abyss, Binary Star Falling into Darkness. We've had a few incidental updates on this game since it was first announced and since April through the summer. We learned about the 2 game modes, how one of them will follow the story of the manga and one of them is a game original story. It seems like this update is mostly about the game original story, which is the Deep in Abyss mode, which just features kind of a nameless main character who becomes a cave raider. Basically, it talks about 2 things here. One, that characters from the anime will make appearances in the original story. I don't know if that means there's some sort of canon order or if it's just kind of a side story.
I believe it said something like when you start the original story mode, Rico and Reg are already at the bottom of the abyss or close to it. So
they're already well on
several levels down. So
yeah.
So you're kind of like trailing along behind.
This is so weird because like it says like, oh, as an original character, you could take on a quest from like current White Whistles like Oz and Bondrude. It's like those are some pretty major characters and they're not really morally great. Especially Bondrude. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm just gonna get quests from this dude, huh? All right. As the community likes to call, he's called Bone Dad in the community. But yeah, that's really something. I'm very
And then
curious.
the other thing here is it details a very short little paragraph about the notebook feature, which is basically an in-game encyclopedia that the main character carries. That kind of is an encyclopedia of characters you've met, items you've found, creatures encountered, things like that. So I'm sure there's going to be some sort of like collectathon aspect to this game in some fashion that'll be captured in this notebook.
Pokemon Legends Arceus 2. Here we go.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, I really wonder what sort of quests you have to do for Ozan and Bondrewd, because they're definitely not characters that I would expect that you would interact with normally. But who knows? That's weird, man. Man, you're just reminding me of like how good the new season of Made in Abyss is right now. Very very fun, lighthearted, jolly go lucky show. That's how it goes, right? Yeah.
I totally trust you.
Just like I
with a game with a name like Made in Abyss. How could you not?
Right.
And that pretty much covers it for major stories or even like game updates for upcoming titles. We do have a few like release date announcements or changes for upcoming, mostly indie games here. A strategy RPG, Vanaris Tactics, launched on PC on August 4th. So this was one of the games that we kind of covered, I think, in brief in one of our summer indie kind of rundowns that we've done. So obviously, late July, early August has been a deluge of big games. So we haven't had anyone cover Vanaris Tactics yet. Maybe we'll have someone poke at it before the end of the year, but it is out on PC. It is on Steam and GOG. Tower of Fantasy launches on August 10th for PC and mobile devices. I think Adam was covering this game, and I don't know if you had expressed interest in this or if it had any other details behind it.
It is a Genshin Impact like, which will inform you.
Genshin Killer.
It will inform you right away what kind of game this is. It's very much crafted and structured like a Genshin Impact. It does have
looks
a
like a Genshin, just like art and character design.
Yeah, it just has a sci-fi twist to it. I've been kind of sort of keeping an eye on this game. I don't know if I'll try it out when it releases. I don't know yet. I am sort of curious, but I'm just like, I don't know, man.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the Steam page still doesn't have the date on it. It just says
the Steam release comes later. It'll have a PC client separate from that, but the Steam and Epic Games release for it comes later, which is
okay.
Yeah, but you can like transfer your account to them when those go live. It is one of those things that like if you want to play this on PC, you should probably get it on the ground floor because it has like limited time stuff at the launch of the game that like you get a lot of good freebies, but like a lot of them expire after like the early September. So if you were hoping to get into this game like by the later through the Steam and Epic Games release, like you do miss out on like quite a few stuff.
Well, every once in a while, when a game like this releases on Steam, they'll be like, now you get a Steam bonus where you get a cosmetic little Valve icon or something like that.
But these like bonuses are like much more substantial to
right
than that. Yeah. So
I was gonna say, didn't they show like a new trailer for that other game from Hoyoverse that they recently made?
Zenless Zone Zero is in closed beta right now, and like that's been making the rounds on what the gameplay is like in that game. It seems to be like a dungeon crawler in the sense like you like visit nodes, and then
is that the action game or the turn-based game?
The action game.
Which one was the turn-based game?
Honkai Star Rail.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, and like it seems like Zenless Zone Zero is like, hey, you proceed through like this dungeon like in a linear fashion, like you go through like these nodes, and like some nodes have like challenges, like you can't use this certain ability or type of attack, and like but it's very much like a flashy like Honkai Impact Third style of game. It seems like with an urban theme around it, which is seems all right. Obviously, it's like it's the first closed beta, so there's like a lot will change with that game. I assume moving forward. So that's kind of what's been going on with that. So yeah, Tower of Fantasy. It seems to already be seeing some changes from its original release in terms of like scheduling. Like I think the first limited banner on release is going to be like Nemesis, and apparently that's a character that didn't show up till like for a few months after its original launch in China. So they're already switching things up for better or worse. I think they want to like get to like their 2.0 release as soon as possible with the global version, because it seems like that's like when people started really liking it. I don't know.
Also in August, we're getting a DLC to a game that released last year, and that is the Ascent. The new DLC is called Cyber Heist, which is, I believe, $10, and will continue the game after the main story of the Ascent. I think I'm the only person here that played it, and I thought it was like, it's one of those things, we see this a lot with DLC, where it's like, I didn't love the game, I thought it was fine, but I'm not really excited to like pick it back up to play just a little added on.
Yeah, like a
piece.
year later, remember like how did this game play? What was my character build and things like that.
Well, I think you watched me play the final chapter, the final boss of the Ascent.
Yeah, but it came out last summer, right? It's been like a year.
Yeah, no, but I just remember like the final boss was like really, really frustrating. It's like it was like a wave based thing. It's like just mooks and mooks and mooks all over the place. But yeah, and the game like wasn't story heavy. It was more like exploration based. And they're like, now your former employer will recontact you for a new secret mission. I guess I don't want to immediately just poo-poo on this DLC. I guess the fact that there was so much distance between the base game and now, like I just have moved on, sort of thing. But I guess now if you haven't played the Ascent, it does have a really fun like soundtrack and really like well realized cyberpunk aesthetic. Though I say well realized, though it did have that thing where they just randomly put like Korean symbols everywhere without any regard for like grammar or language. So. Yeah. Maybe not in so many respects, but it does have a new cyber edition, which basically bundles the base game and the new DLC together. So maybe if there's really good word of mouth, I'll revisit, but I'll just have to wait until that comes through. I do like how in this press release for this new DLC, they're like, by the way, we're also selling a new plush for like a character that I don't even remember. Like, okay, there's a new the Ascent plush for the iconic character Noghead, which I don't remember.
That reminds me, they just had a like, since we're on the subject, like I guess a GSC event like for Figmas and stuff, like came out, like their catalog was released like yesterday, and like there's some funny ones. You have like a Mio Figma already coming away from Xenoblade 3. They also have a Figma for Torrent from Elden Ring, the horse coming. Hey, that's fun. That's good.
Best horse award.
I was thinking like if I wanted an Elden Ring figure, what would I get?
Probably get some of the bosses might be fun.
What's the name of the witch with the floppy hat?
Oh yeah, Rana
would be good.
You have to have the floppy hat,
dude. You can have, dude. That'd be great.
Adam, you haven't even played Elden Ring yet. Adam, go play Elden
Ring. I like the floppy hat.
You can have Rani and Mio face because they share the same voice actress in English. There you go.
I didn't know that. And the last bit of news is that an open-ended simulation RPG, Potion Permit. I think I've seen this on like some YouTube channels that talk about like cozy, like comfortable games, like Witchbrook and all that. Potion Permit is releasing on pretty much everything. PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, Series, Switch, and PC on September 22nd. I thought this also had a mobile version, but maybe not. But yeah, Potion Permit. So it's looks like an alchemy-focused game coming out in late September with a pixel-based art style. So Adam's got the release date announcement trailer up on the site.
This is one of those games where it's actually been announced for a while, but I wasn't clear if it was like an RPG or not. But then they started explicitly calling it one. So I'm like, fine, we'll cover it. And it's got some like progression mechanics and stuff that you would sort of associate with a light RPG. But apparently when we covered this game, like it caught a lot of people's attention. Like the people like this sort of, alchemy, potion-y, crafty sort of game, I guess. So
and it looks like the one thing that's kind of different about this is that you're focused on being like a healer. You take like care of residents that have different ailments, and you're creating potions to like cure them, which is kind of a focus that I think a lot of these games haven't had, where it's more like making spells or things like that, where this is more Some characters will be mixed to brew medicine, vitamins. As you become experienced, you have higher level recipes that you can help with up to 30 townsfolk. So it kind of has like an Animal Crossing type vibe, or but in the aspect that you're like the town doctor, which is kind of a fun, different thing that I don't think I've seen before. And with those release dates out of the way, that kind of covers us for this episode of the podcast. So a little bit of a nice light news week, especially in the sense that the Tactics Ogre news had leaked several times beforehand. But obviously a lot of games out at this time. We're playing through a bunch of things at the moment. We're sure that our listeners are playing through a bunch of games at the moment. We will continue to discuss what we're currently in the middle of as we go forward and into August, and we start seeing things like Gundam, SD Battle Alliance, and Soul Hackers 2. There was an SD Battle Alliance update this week. I think it just listed a few more mechs that were coming to the game. I don't know if you wanted to go over those briefly, Josh.
It's mainly just like, the mechs that you get like for pre-ordering the game and early unlocks. It's fun. If you're interested, go check it out. There's some fun footage in there. They've been releasing a lot of like combo heavy videos to show off these units. But not a big update for it.
So obviously a lot of the recent games that we have covered on the podcast are covered also on the site. We have reviews for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, thanks to Josh. We didn't talk about it on this podcast, but obviously Live Alive is still pretty new. We've got the review and the guide coverage of that also up on the site. Potentially in the future, you might see more Digimon stuff on the site. We'll see. But then also all the news for Tactics Ogre Reborn. We've got all the stuff from the leaks and the official announcement on that up on the site, as well as all the Xenoblade 3 guides that Adam has put together. You can follow us on all the social media channels. You can just look for RPG Site on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can join our Discord by going to discord.gg/RPG Site. We've got a specific channel talking about Xenoblade 3 discussion that we try to make sure that we have really good protocols in place for discussing the game around spoilers. And you will hear from us on the next edition of the Tetracast as we meet again next week. So until you hear from us then, stay safe and take care. We'll talk to you later.
Later, everyone.
All right, Chow, you wanted to do a what?